Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today we're diving into 20 chilling true encounters from Texas summer nights, where the air stays hot, the roads stay empty, and something unexplainable is always lurking nearby. From eerie lights in the woods to strangers who vanish without a trace, these aren't just stories, they're warnings. Before we begin, don't make the same mistake most viewers do, forgetting to subscribe. Stick around, this is just the beginning, and the dark has a lot more to show you. So where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Let me know in the comments, because the night always finds a way to follow you. Let's begin. I never told my wife the full story, not even when she asked me why I stopped driving nights completely, even though the extra money used to help us stay afloat. I blamed it on the baby, on getting older, on my eyesight, anything but the truth. Because once you say it out loud, it becomes real, and I've spent the last 6 years trying to convince myself it wasn't. This happened in the summer of 2018, July 22nd, to be exact. It was a Saturday night bleeding into a humid Sunday morning. I was driving back from a job in Nacogdoches. Nothing exciting, just a short cargo run for an equipment supplier. I used to do these small solo routes to make some extra money before our son was born. Load up at 6, drop off around midnight, back home before sunrise. That night, I was ahead of schedule and feeling good. Had a Whataburger coffee in the cup holder, radio tuned low to some late-night blues station that crackled in and out around the pine forests. The roads out there get real empty after midnight, just blacktop, bugs, and that oppressive East Texas humidity pressing in through the vents even with the AC blasting. It was 2:03 a.m. when I saw her. I know the exact time because I glanced at the dash as I slowed down. I was on County Road 429, about 15 minutes south of Douglas, heading west. It's not a road most people use, unless they live out there. Narrow, winding, no streetlights, just you and the night. She was just standing there, right in the middle of the damn road. No flashlight, no phone, nothing reflective. Just a woman, maybe mid-30s, long black hair, pale as moonlight, wearing a white nightgown that looked damp around the hem. I swerved hard, tires screeching on the shoulder gravel, heart pounding like a jackhammer. I thought I'd hit her. I stopped, yanked the gear into park, and jumped out. "Ma'am?" She was standing still, too still, no flinch, no startled look, just turned her head slowly toward me. Not all the way, just enough that I could see her eyes catch the headlights. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" Nothing. I didn't get closer. Something about her made every instinct in me pull back. Not fear exactly, more like hesitation, like how a dog freezes when it smells something it can't place. She turned fully and walked toward the passenger side of my truck. Her bare feet made no sound on the asphalt. Her gown clung to her legs, and I could see her arms were streaked with dirt. She didn't look me in the eye. She opened the door and sat down. No question, no hesitation. Just slid into the seat, closed the door softly, and stared straight ahead like she belonged there. I stood there, door still open, half expecting to hear a car behind me, or someone else calling out from the woods. Nothing, just cicadas and my own breathing. After a few seconds of frozen confusion, I got back in and closed the driver's side door. She didn't look at me, just said, in a calm, dry voice, "Take me to where it started." I remember repeating it. Where what started? She didn't answer. Her hands were clasped tight in her lap, fingers locked together so tightly her knuckles were white. She stared straight ahead, unblinking. I should have asked her to get out, should have called the sheriff's office, but I didn't. There was something about her, not threatening, not even sad, just hollow, like if I left her out there, she'd still be sitting there days later, waiting for another car, so I drove. We went maybe 2 miles before she finally spoke again. "Do you believe in place memories?" she asked, still not looking at me. "Like ghosts?" "No," she said, "like when the ground remembers something." It was such a weird thing to say I didn't know how to respond. I tried to make light of it. "You mean like battlefields and old cemeteries and all that?" But she didn't smile, didn't move. "The road remembers too," she said, "especially this one." We kept driving. There are no houses on that stretch of County Road 429. No lights, just trees, and barbed wire fences, and long shadows. It gets darker than you think out there. A kind of deep dark that makes your headlights feel useless. Eventually, she leaned forward slightly and said, "Here." I pulled off onto a dirt path, more like 2 ruts in the grass, leading into a field of overgrown brush. There was no gate, no house, just open land and darkness. I killed the engine. "This is where what started," I asked, finally turning toward her. She looked at me. Her eyes were dull, not lifeless, just tired in a way that felt ancient. My father, she said quietly, used to drive this way home, every Sunday night. Okay, he stopped here once. For a girl standing in the road. My mouth went dry. She wasn't real, she added, but he didn't know that. I didn't say anything. He brought her home, she said, and now her voice trembled slightly, and she never left. I glanced around. Nothing but trees, empty space, heat buzzing in the night air. She turned toward me again. He wasn't a bad man. Not at first, but she changed things. My mother, my sisters, me, all of us. It started here. I reached for my phone without thinking, but the screen was black, wouldn't turn on, like it was drained or dead. My truck too. Dashboard lights gone, no hum of the engine, dead. You have to leave now, she said suddenly, voice sharper, urgent. What? You brought me here. That's all I needed. Her hands were trembling now. Her face was pale. If you stay, she whispered, it'll know you too. I don't know why I listened. I just knew I had to get out of there. I opened the door and stepped out. The air was thick, thicker than before, almost hard to breathe. I circled around to the passenger side to help her out, but she was gone. The door was closed, seat empty. I stood there, heart pounding, staring into the darkness. And then I heard it, a sound like bones breaking, slow and wet, a shape rising from the grass maybe 20 yards out. Too tall, too crooked. It shimmered, like heat on pavement, but darker, more solid. I didn't wait. I jumped back in, tried the key, nothing. Tried again, dashboard flickered. Third try, engine roared to life. I reversed, spun the wheel, tore out of that field like the devil himself was behind me. My rearview mirror shook loose. I never looked back. I drove straight home, didn't even stop to pee. When I pulled into our driveway, the digital clock on the dash blinked 2:03 a.m. It was the exact same time I'd seen her. My truck had a GPS tracker. I checked the logs the next day. There was a missing chunk of time, a full hour gone. I went back out there once, in daylight, found the spot. No path, no ruts, no field, just a solid barbed wire fence and dense trees, like the place I'd pulled into didn't exist. I've talked to a few people since, asked about that road, about any old stories, any accidents. Only one man said anything of interest. An old timer at the gas station said there used to be a farmhouse out there, burned down in the 70s. Whole family lost. Father survived, moved away. No one ever rebuilt. I asked his name. He said, can't remember the first, but the last name was Mercer. That's my wife's maiden name. I never told her that part, but sometimes when she's asleep, she whispers things. Once, clear as day, I heard her say, the road remembers, and I swear, I haven't driven after dark since. I've never talked about this outside of my immediate family, and even then, we keep it to hushed conversations, like we're afraid someone or something might overhear. I'm only sharing it now because I've started seeing the lights again, and I need to know if anyone else has. If you've ever driven Highway 287 through North Texas, especially during a heat wave, you might have seen them. Most people pass by without noticing. Others say they're just fireflies. But those of us who've stopped, we know better. It happened in July 2018. I was 25, living in Amarillo at the time, working a miserable call center job that barely paid enough for rent. My younger brother Matt had just turned 21. He was a smart kid, quieter than me, and more into books than people. We weren't especially close growing up, but after our dad passed suddenly from a heart attack earlier that year, we started talking more. He was going to school in Denton, and I'd promised him I'd drive down to help him move into a new apartment. I left Amarillo around 2:30 p.m., figuring it'd be a straight shot on 287 through Vernon, Wichita Falls, then cutting down I-35. It was around 108 Fahrenheit that day, the kind of heat that makes the horizon shimmer and your dashboard feel like a frying pan. I had the AC cranked to max, a cooler of Gatorade in the passenger seat, and true crime podcasts queued up. By the time I hit Vernon, it was just after 6:45 p.m. The sun was still high, but dipping toward that golden hour glow. I remember checking my phone, no service. That's not unusual out there. Vernon's one of those blink and you'll miss it towns, surrounded by endless fields and patches of forest that always seemed out of place in that part of Texas. Right around that area, I started seeing these flickering blue lights in the tree line off the shoulder. At first I thought maybe they were fireflies, but they were too bright, almost neon, and they didn't blink like insects. They hovered in pairs or small groups, always just inside the shade of the trees. I probably wouldn't have paid them much attention if I hadn't noticed that every few miles they seemed closer to the road. At first I chalked it up to heat stroke or glare, but then I passed a mile marker, 1:45, and the same two blue lights flashed again, just 20 feet into the trees. I slowed the car. There was something strange about them, like they weren't reflecting light, but generating their own, pulsing faintly in sync. I told myself it was just weird lighting, but my skin crawled. There was no wind, no animal sounds, even the bugs had gone silent. I looked at my phone again, still no service. I figured I'd call Matt once I hit Wichita Falls, but 2 miles later, I saw a car pulled off the shoulder, an older red pickup. Lights off, no one inside. The driver's side door was open. That stopped me. I slowed down, rolled my window halfway, and glanced at the trees again. There they were, the blue lights. But this time, they weren't hovering. They were drifting toward the road, smooth and slow, like they were following me. Something primal kicked in, like an instinct I didn't know I had. I hit the gas. The next 30 minutes were a blur. I drove way over the speed limit, eyes locked on the road, trying not to look at the trees. Every so often I'd catch a glimpse of those lights, always in pairs, always staying just out of the sun's reach. The worst part was that I started to feel like they weren't just following me, they were watching me. When I finally saw the Wichita Falls exit sign, I almost cried. I merged onto I-44 without looking back. Matt didn't believe me when I told him that night. I wasn't even sure I believed myself. Maybe it was the heat, maybe I hadn't slept enough. But then I saw something that made me question everything. The next day, as we were loading boxes into his new place, Matt's roommate, Caleb, walked in holding his phone. "Dude," he said, "check this out. Some guy went missing outside Vernon last night. State troopers found his truck just off 2087, door wide open, keys still in the ignition." I asked to see the article. It was a local bulletin, barely a paragraph long, but the picture showed that same red pickup I'd seen on the side of the road. No trace of the driver. They never found him. I didn't sleep that night, kept thinking about those lights, kept replaying that moment when they started to follow the car. It felt less like something natural and more like bait, like they were meant to be seen. I drove back to Amarillo the next evening, in broad daylight, and didn't take 287. Took the long route, up through Oklahoma. Added 4 hours to the trip, but I didn't care. For a while, I avoided the area completely. Took different routes to see Matt. Never drove at night, but in 2022, I got a job that required frequent travel around North Texas. Eventually, I found myself back on 287 again, and at some point, I saw them again. It was June, just after 7 p.m. I was southbound, heading toward Decatur. I'd almost forgotten about the lights until they appeared again, flickering in the treetops like static. This time they were higher, maybe 30 feet up, like they'd climbed. I felt sick immediately. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. But I did something I regret. I took a picture. Just a quick snap through the windshield. I figured, if I could capture it, maybe I could prove I wasn't crazy. But when I looked at the photo later, there were no lights, just trees and the blur of motion. I deleted it, feeling stupid. That night, I dreamed of them, except they weren't lights anymore. They were eyes, glowing blue eyes, watching from the trees, swaying slowly like they were part of the branches, and beneath them, dozens of figures stood motionless, human-shaped, but wrong, too long, too thin. They didn't move, they just stared. In the dream, I was back on 287, but my car had died. No phone service, no traffic, just the ticking of the engine as it cooled and the sound of something dragging through leaves just out of sight. I woke up sweating, heart pounding, and I swear, just for a moment, the room had a faint blue glow, like something had just left. Over the past year, I've met 2 other people who've had similar experiences. One was a trucker who swears he saw a girl standing in the middle of 287 around 3 a.m. near the same stretch of road. When he got out to help, she was gone, just vanished, and blue lights flickered from both sides of the road. He quit long-haul driving after that. The other was a retired sheriff's deputy who said there have been multiple disappearances near mile markers 140 to 150, going back decades. We stopped reporting them publicly, he told me, just chalked it up to transients, but the locals know, they don't stop on that stretch. I tried looking up missing person cases tied to that area. Most of them are small mentions, hikers, travelers, even a couple of kids back in the 80s who went looking for a dog and never came back. It's not enough to make headlines, but it adds up, quietly. Here's the part I haven't told anyone. Last week I was in Vernon again. I had to be. Work sent me. It was 5:30 p.m., still blazing hot, when I checked into a cheap motel just off the highway. I told myself I'd be in and out in less than 12 hours. No night driving. No side roads. That night, as I was brushing my teeth, the lights flickered. Not outside. In the mirror. For a second, not even a full second, I saw them. Behind me. Blue, pulsing slowly. When I turned around, there was nothing there. No glow, no sound. But I swear I could feel heat on my back, like something had just moved past. I didn't sleep. Left the TV on. Door locked. Chair braced against the handle. This morning, I checked out before sunrise. As I was pulling onto the highway, I saw something carved into a telephone pole just before the on-ramp. It was weathered, maybe old, but it was there. It said, in jagged letters, "Don't follow the lights, they remember you." I haven't stopped shaking since. I'm back home now. Curtains drawn, all the lights on. I haven't told my brother. I haven't told my co-workers. I don't know what they are or what they want. I just know they're still out there, watching. And somehow, they remember me. I'm not proud of the story I'm about to tell. It's the kind of thing that creeps into your memory when everything else is quiet. I've never talked about it online, never told the whole thing to anyone besides my friend Danny, and even then I left out parts. This happened in the summer of 2018, around late June. We were 17, dumb, and feeling invincible. The town is Palestine, Texas. Not the Middle East, not a war zone, just some quiet East Texas place with a lot of trees, empty roads, and people who don't like to talk much after dark. I'd moved there with my mum when I was 13, after my parents split up. By 17 I had a decent friend group, and we did what every bored teenager does, drove around too fast, smoked whatever we could get our hands on, and tried to act like the small town couldn't keep us boxed in. That night it was me, Danny, his girlfriend Sarah, and this guy Mason. Mason was newish, moved from Tyler to live with his uncle. Kind of a sketchy dude, always had something weird to say, but never shut up. He had a crappy old Lincoln Town car, those big steel boats that feel like they should be driven by a funeral director. We weren't supposed to be out past midnight, curfews and all, but we didn't care. We were cruising around these back roads past Slocum, smoking and listening to old rap like we were in a movie or something. It was hot, even though the sun had been down for hours. The kind of sticky, airless heat that makes everything feel slow. The radio was low, just background noise, and we were barely talking anymore. I remember the time exactly, 12:47 a.m. I'd just checked my phone because my mum had texted, asking if I was still at Danny's, which was where I'd told her I'd be. I lied and said yeah. We were out on this long stretch of County Road 233. Nothing on either side but woods and the occasional fenced-in pasture. No streetlights, just the car's high beams cutting through the dark. Then Mason slammed on the brakes. I thought we'd hit a deer. The way he cursed and jerked the wheel, we all flinched. Sarah screamed, but we didn't hear a thud, no impact. The car skidded to a stop right in the middle of the road, dust kicking up around us. "What the hell?" Danny said, already twisting around to look. Mason was breathing hard. "You didn't see that?" I leaned forward from the back seat. "See what?" There was something, in the road, right there. He pointed dead ahead. We all looked. Nothing. The brights were still on, shining down the road into the curve. I didn't see anything. No movement, no roadkill, just pavement and trees and a ditch on either side that dropped off into brush. "You probably saw a raccoon or something," Sarah mumbled, trying to sound annoyed, but still clearly rattled. "No," Mason said, voice low. "It was standing up." We all went silent. "Like an animal?" I asked, even though I already knew that's not what he meant. "No," he said. "It looked like a girl, like a woman, I swear to God." Danny laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Okay, sure man, a woman standing in the middle of a back road at 1 a.m. Makes sense. I'm not messing around, dude. She came out of the ditch, like crawled up from the side, and just stood there, barefoot. Her dress was all soaked." Sarah pulled her knees up to her chest, glancing out the window. "Let's just go. This is creepy. I wish we had. I wish we'd just turned the car around and left it there, gone home and forgotten it." But Mason, whether out of guilt or ego, pulled off onto the narrow gravel shoulder and got out. "You're seriously gonna look for her?" I asked, watching him dig around in the back seat for his flashlight. She might be hurt, he said. Danny rolled his eyes but didn't stop him. Sarah locked her door, and I considered doing the same. Mason walked up a few yards ahead, shining the flashlight into the ditch. He called out, "Hey, you okay? Hello?" Nothing answered. The woods were buzzing. Cicadas, frogs, the hum of 1,000 things living in the dark. I watched him sweep the light side to side, shining into the brush. He looked small out there, just this skinny guy in a too big hoodie and cargo shorts, standing under that hazy yellow beam. Then something stepped up out of the ditch. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No sound, no scream. Just this figure slowly rising like it had been lying in the weeds, waiting. A girl, maybe in her 20s, barefoot like Mason said, wearing what looked like a white sundress, but it was soaked through and clinging to her skin. Her hair hung straight down, dripping, even though it hadn't rained in days, and she was smiling. I'll never forget that smile. Not wide, not exaggerated, just wrong, like she knew something we didn't, like she'd been waiting for us. Mason took a step back, stuttering something. The girl didn't move, just stood at the edge of the road, a few feet from the yellow line, staring at him like he was an old friend. Danny unlocked the doors and opened his. "Hey, let's go, right now." Mason didn't respond. The girl took one step toward him, and that's when he turned and ran. He jumped back in the car, breathing like he'd just sprinted a mile. Drive, go, go, go. Danny didn't ask questions, he floored it. The tires kicked up gravel, and we peeled off down the road, headlights bouncing. No one spoke for a long time. Sarah was crying softly. I couldn't stop glancing out the rear window. I didn't see her anymore, but I felt like she could still see us. Finally, Mason said, "She didn't blink. I don't think she even breathed. Just smiled." We made it back into town around 1:30. Danny pulled into the Walmart parking lot, and we sat there under the harsh lights, windows down, trying to feel normal again. Nobody was in the mood to go home, and no one wanted to say what we were all thinking. Sarah finally broke the silence. Why was she wet? Nobody answered. A few days passed. I tried to tell myself it was just a weird encounter with someone high, or lost, maybe escaped from a nearby property, but something kept bothering me. So I started asking around, quietly of course, just subtle stuff. I asked this older guy who works at the gas station by our school if anything weird ever happened out on County Road 230. He just looked at me and said, "You've been out there after midnight." I nodded. He shook his head and muttered, "You shouldn't." That was all he said. I got curious, maybe too curious. I looked through some old news reports, mostly local archives. The library had microfilm from the 90s and 2000s. I spent hours going through them until I found something. In 1994, a girl named Lacey Franklin had gone missing after a party in Slocum, last seen walking home along County Road 213. They found her car abandoned just off the road, hazard lights still blinking. They never found her body. There was a photo, black and white. Lacey was smiling. It was the same smile. I haven't gone down that road since. Not at night, not ever. Danny won't talk about it anymore. Sarah moved away last year and changed her number. Mason, well, that's the worst part. 2 weeks after that night, he went missing. His car was found parked on the shoulder of 2133. Same stretch of road, driver's door wide open, flashlight still on, lying in the ditch. They never found him. I don't know what we saw. I don't know if it was Lacey or something wearing her face. I only know what I remember, and I remember the way she looked at us, like we'd done exactly what she wanted. So if you're ever driving near Palestine, Texas, especially past midnight, stay off 2133, and if you see someone standing barefoot in the road, soaking wet and smiling, don't stop. This happened last year, in mid-November, when I was working nights as a courier for a private medical transport company in Arkansas. I'd only been with them for about 5 months, mostly running urgent meds or lab samples between clinics, nursing homes and small hospitals. The company was legit, if a little sketchy with scheduling. We weren't EMTs or anything, just drivers with clean records, decent cars, and the ability to stay awake past midnight. That Friday, I had a route that ran me from Little Rock to Texarkana, with a couple pickups in between. It had been raining on and off since the early evening, and by the time I left the last clinic in Camden, at 12:11 a.m., everything outside looked like it was under plastic wrap, just wet roads and fogged up signs. The dispatcher had told me the last stop was a drop-off at a hospital just over the border in Texas. It was the usual stuff, samples in a locked cooler, nothing time critical. I remember checking the route on my GPS. Google Maps showed the usual path along Highway 82, about 90 minutes if I kept a steady pace. Then something weird happened. As I merged onto 278 heading west, my GPS pinged and suggested a faster route, a blue line veering south off the highway about 15 minutes ahead, cutting through a town I didn't recognize, Red Lick. Now, I've lived in Arkansas most of my life. I've driven through pretty much every back road between Little Rock and Hope, but I'd never heard of a Red Lick. I figured maybe it was just some forgotten community, or maybe an old name that got updated on maps recently. Either way, the new route shaved off about 12 minutes, and the roads looked fine, mostly county roads and a little highway. I was tired, it was late, and every minute counted, so I took it. The road turned off the main highway near a place called Fulton. Narrow 2-lane blacktop, cracked at the edges with no lines in the center. My wipers were making that squeaky noise they do when the rain's light but annoying. Outside, the fog had thickened into something that looked like pale smoke clinging to the tree trunks. No streetlights, no signs, just black trees and my headlights. After about 10 minutes, I saw a green road sign on the right, Red Lick, 2 miles. So it was real. That made me feel a little better. Except, when I passed the sign, my signal dropped. Not a full disconnect, just enough for my GPS to stop refreshing. The little blue dot on the screen just froze. I still had the map, but it wasn't updating my location. My 4G bar dropped to 1, then none. It wasn't a huge deal. I could follow the map visually. The turn I needed was less than a mile ahead. Sure enough, I saw it, a left onto a smaller road called County RD 34. There was another sign right beneath it, a white one with black letters, but it was so rusted and faded I couldn't make it out. As soon as I turned, something felt different. The fog was thicker here, so thick it turned the edges of my headlights into soft cones. Trees leaned in closer, like they were bending slightly overhead. I slowed down to maybe 25, just in case a deer ran out. The road narrowed. I hadn't noticed on the GPS, but it quickly went from paved to gravel. My tires kicked up wet dust and small rocks. The sound changed. Everything got quieter. About 5 minutes in, I saw a mailbox. It was the first sign of any home I'd seen since the highway. A battered leaning post with the number 8117 on the side. No name, just past it, a dirt driveway curled into the woods. And at the end of that driveway, barely visible through the trees, was a house, 2 stories, old wood siding, one of those wraparound porches sagging in the middle. The windows were dark, but I thought I saw a dim yellow glow in one, like maybe a lantern or a single lamp was on inside. It wasn't my destination. I had no deliveries scheduled until Texarkana, but I slowed down and stared as I passed it. Something about the house just grabbed my attention. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't like the place looked haunted or whatever, just wrong, like it was supposed to be somewhere else, or someone else. I kept going. I remember checking the time. It was 12:48 a.m. The rain had started up again, light at first, then steadier. My signal still hadn't come back. The road dipped into a shallow ravine, and for a moment I felt that familiar sense of disorientation you get on country roads at night, where everything blurs together and you're not sure if you're going in circles. When I came up out of the dip, something was different. I recognized the same mailbox, 817, same rusted post, same curve in the driveway, same house. I swear to God I hadn't turned around. I hadn't taken any turns at all. I'd just driven straight for at least 10 minutes. I pulled over and killed the engine. Everything went silent, except the soft ticking of the rain on the roof. I looked at my phone again, still no signal. The GPS showed the same frozen dot. Then I looked up at the house, and the porch light was on. Not the faint yellow glow I'd seen before. This was brighter, warmer, like an old incandescent bulb. I could see the porch swing now, hanging lopsided by 2 chains, one shorter than the other. A rocking chair next to it, turned slightly toward the driveway. I sat there for a minute, just watching. Nothing moved, no curtains, no figures, just the light. Eventually I shook it off. Maybe I'd missed a turn, or doubled back by mistake. It was late, I was tired, and GPS can screw up in the sticks. I started the car, backed up a bit, and kept going down the same direction. This time I watched the road carefully. I marked a bent fence post I passed, a trash bag caught in the trees, a piece of a tire tread lying in the dirt. I kept those markers in mind, watched them pass. 10 minutes later, I saw the mailbox again. 817, the same goddamn house. But this time, the porch light was off, and the rocking chair was turned toward me. I stared at it for a long time, not moving, not thinking. Then I saw something shift behind the window on the second floor. Not a figure, not a face, just movement, a subtle flicker, like someone walking by. I was done. I threw the car in reverse, back down the gravel, until I could spin around, and peeled back the way I came. Except now, there were no markers, no fence post, no trash bag, no tire tread, just gravel, trees, fog, and rain. I kept driving until my hands started cramping. I checked my phone, still no signal. I opened my window and listened. Nothing but wind and wet gravel under the tires. Then I saw something new, a wooden sign nailed to a tree, black letters burned into it. No road through. What? I slowed to a stop. Just ahead, the road ended. Not blocked, not closed. It just ended. The gravel petered out into wet dirt. Then woods, thick woods, no path, no driveway, no tire tracks. I turned around, and the house was there again, closer. The porch light was on. The rocking chair was empty. The front door was open. Just a crack. I don't remember getting out of the car. I don't remember deciding to walk up the driveway, but I did. The gravel crunched under my shoes. My shirt was soaked through from the rain, sticking to my back. Every step felt heavier than the last, like something was pressing down on my shoulders. The front steps creaked. The boards under my feet were soft, swollen with water. I pushed the door open with my foot. Inside, everything smelled like damp wood and mold. The living room was empty, dusty furniture covered in sheets, a fireplace choked with ash. There was a photograph on the wall, a black and white family portrait, faded, but you could still make out the faces. A man, a woman, and a young girl. The girl's eyes looked scratched out, not faded, actually scratched out. I don't know why I walked in, I just did. I made it to the middle of the living room before I heard the sound upstairs. A footstep, then another, then nothing. I turned and ran, back down the steps, across the gravel, into the car. I locked the doors and started the engine, my hands shaking. Then my phone lit up. One new notification, signal restored. The GPS pinged. I was back on 2078. No sign of the house. I was parked on the shoulder of the highway, right where I'd turned off. It was 1:39 a.m. I'd lost nearly an hour. I drove straight to Texarkana. Didn't stop once. Dropped off the cooler and didn't say a word. When I got back to Little Rock the next morning, I checked every map I could. Google, Apple, OpenStreetMap. There's no County Road 34 south of Fulton, and there's no record of a town called Red Lick in Arkansas. I told my manager I wasn't doing night routes anymore. I started looking for another job that week. I still drive sometimes, but I never take suggested routes. Never trust the faster way. And every so often, late at night, when the weather's just right and the fog's hanging low, I think about that house, and I wonder what would have happened if I'd gone upstairs. I don't really know why I'm writing this. Maybe I just need to get it out. Maybe I want someone to tell me I'm not crazy, or that it's all explainable, or hell, even that I made it up, because that would be a relief at this point. I'm not posting this for karma or likes or whatever, and I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm just putting it out there, like a pressure valve I need to twist open, because it's been eating at me for the last year, and I haven't told a soul. Not really. Not what actually happened. It started in August 2023, when I moved to Alba, Pennsylvania. It's not exactly a place you've heard of unless you've lived nearby. Tiny town, population under 400. Real quiet, real old. I only moved there because I got hired to work remotely for a company out of Boston, and I couldn't afford to live anywhere near civilization. So I rented a little farmhouse about 5 miles outside town. 2 stories, creaky stairs, oil heat, all that old-timey charm. My landlord was some guy named Mark who lived in Philly and inherited the house from his uncle. I don't think he'd set foot in it for years. Place still had furniture in it from the 70s. My days were mostly the same. Wake up around 7, pour shitty coffee into a chipped mug, log in by 8. I worked tech support, nothing glamorous. At lunch I'd walk the property a little. It had this overgrown cornfield in back, long dead, and the woods started about 50 yards beyond that. No neighbors in view, unless you counted deer. The only sound that ever broke the silence was the train. There's a freight line that cuts through the edge of Alba and runs parallel to Route 14, just outside town. Every night, at 1:11 a.m. exactly, the train passes through. You can set your watch to it. I'd hear it rumble faintly in the distance, a low mechanical thunder, followed by the horn. Always 2 long blasts, one short, another long. Like clockwork. I remember the first time I noticed the screaming. It was mid-September. I'd been there just over a month. I was up late reading. Insomnia, mostly, and the clock on my phone had just flipped to 1:11. Right on cue, I heard the train. But as it passed, there was something else. A sound I couldn't place at first. At first I thought it was some weird distortion, maybe a whistle catching the wind, or brakes screeching weird against the tracks. But it wasn't metallic. It was organic, screaming, faint, but not like someone yelling from far away, more like it was buried under the sound of the train, like a recording layered into the noise, not high-pitched like a scream from a horror movie. But this guttural, raw howling, it didn't sound human, but it didn't not sound human either, somewhere in between, like someone dying, but stretched out, painful and long and wrong. I froze, sat upright in bed, listened. It only lasted as long as the train did, maybe 15, 20 seconds, and then it was gone, just silence again. No wind, no birds, no crickets, dead quiet. I stayed up until the sun came up, couldn't sleep after that. The next morning I chalked it up to imagination. Late hour, groggy brain, maybe I'd dozed off and dreamed it. Sleep paralysis even, I'd had that before, heard weird shit, seen shadows, except it happened again the next night. 1:11 a.m, train, screams, not just once, every night, always starting with the train, always ending when the last car passed. Same awful distant wailing, like 100 voices trapped in a tunnel, clawing to get out. I started recording it, first just on my phone, then with a Zoom H1 mic I ordered on Amazon. Then I set up an old laptop by the window with an external mic, hit record every night around 1:05. Nothing. Every time I listened to the playback the next morning, it was just train noise, maybe a little wind, no voices, no screaming, no distortion, just plain audio, as if whatever I was hearing wasn't there at all. But it was. I know it was. Around this point, I started asking around. It's not like there were a lot of people in Alba, but I made excuses to strike up conversation. Went into town more, hung out at this little diner called Marion's, got friendly with the waitress, Erin, asked her if the train bothered her sleep. She didn't even blink. The one at 1:11, she said. Nah, you get used to it. You ever hear anything weird with it? She looked at me a little longer than necessary. You mean the screaming? That's when I knew I wasn't losing it. Yeah, I said, so it's not just me. She shrugged, cleared a plate. It's been doing that since before I was born. My dad used to say it started after that derailment in the 70s, killed a bunch of people, but then other folks say it goes back longer. I dunno, it's just a thing. A thing? She nodded, like she was talking about a seasonal breeze, or a weird bird call. People don't really talk about it. Some pretend they don't hear it, most just ignore it. It's always been like that. I pressed her a little more, but she started getting cagey, said she had tables to check. The conversation died there, but it didn't leave me. For a few days I felt okay. I wasn't crazy. Other people heard it. I tried to just let it be, but then came the night of September 27th, the night the screaming changed. It was raining, a cold, steady downpour. I remember because the roof leaked in the upstairs hallway. I had a bucket under the drip. I stayed up reading again, couldn't concentrate. At 1:11, the train came. I braced for the usual, the moaning, the low distorted shrieking, but this time it was louder, not just a little. It was like it was right outside the house, like someone was standing at the edge of the cornfield screaming with their lungs ripped open. And this time, God, this part still makes my skin crawl. It said something. I couldn't make out the words, not fully. It was like a voice buried in static, stretched thin and wet and mangled. But I caught one phrase, over and over, let me out, let me out. I backed away from the window, sat on the floor of the bedroom like a little kid, covered my ears. It kept going, until the train was gone. Then silence again. I didn't sleep, didn't work the next day either, just sat in the kitchen with my laptop open, staring at the waveform from the recording. Flat, normal, no voice, just train. I don't remember why I did it, but I went into town again that day, back to Marion's. Erin wasn't there. I asked the guy behind the counter, a short bald guy named Walt, about the train. He gave me a weird look. Still hearing it? Still? He nodded, thought maybe it stopped. Some people say it goes quiet if you don't listen, if you pretend it ain't there. Has anyone ever tried to find it? I asked, like gone to the tracks at night. He hesitated. You don't go near that line at night, not during the train. Why not? Walt looked past me, toward the window. You just don't. That night, I couldn't help it. I drove. It was 12:47 a.m. I pulled on jeans, a hoodie, grabbed a flashlight, and drove the back roads until I reached the crossing at Black Hollow Road. It's one of those rural crossings with no gates, just the lights and a crossbuck. You can stand maybe 10 feet from the rails. I parked and waited. Nothing. Nothing. I felt it before I heard it. The rumble in the gravel, the wind shifting. The train came around the bend, like a beast through smoke, lights cutting fog, massive, endless, car after car, thundering past. I raised my phone to record. Then came the screaming, so loud, I staggered back. It didn't come from the train, it came from behind me. I turned the flashlight. There was no one there, but I could feel something, like a presence just outside the edge of the beam, like someone circling me, watching, breathing. I don't remember driving home. I must have peeled out, because when I came to, I was in my driveway, engine running, hands shaking. That was the first night I started locking the bedroom door. After that, things escalated. I'd wake up with the window open, even though I'd locked it the night before. I started seeing footprints in the dirt behind the house. Long, bare ones, not quite human, like someone dragging. Sometimes, I'd find dead birds on the porch, always with the neck twisted backwards. I stopped sleeping entirely. At one point, I tried to leave, packed a bag, got in the car, hit the road south toward Harrisburg. But as soon as I crossed into the next county, I got this overwhelming headache. My ears rang, my nose bled. I pulled over to throw up, and when I looked up, the GPS said I was back in Alba. I turned the car around. Same thing. Every road out led me back to that town, back to that house, back to the train. I tried calling my landlord. No answer. Tried emailing him. My messages bounced back. The number was suddenly out of service. I Googled him. Found an obituary dated 2019. Mark Vensetti, died in a house fire in Philadelphia. Same guy. I don't know who I'd been talking to. On October 11th, I decided to stay up outside. I set up a camping chair in the cornfield, about 20 feet from the house. Brought the good mic, laptop open, headphones in. 111, train, and the screaming started. But this time, it wasn't out there. It was in the headphones. Clear, undeniable, guttural moans, sobbing, shrieks, words, clearer than ever. I'm still here, let me out. You hear me, you hear me, you hear me. Then a whisper, not through the mic but in my ear. You're next. I ripped the headphones off, shined the flashlight around. Nothing, just corn. But when I looked down, the laptop screen had gone black. The only thing on it was a single line of red text, blinking in the center. 111 is your time now. I slammed it shut and ran. The house felt wrong when I got back inside, like it didn't belong to me anymore, like it never had. I haven't left since. The train still comes, every night. 111. I stopped recording. I tried boarding the windows, but they unsealed themselves by morning. I tried calling friends, but they all say I sound distant, different, like there's an echo in my voice. I don't know how long I've been here. I stopped checking the calendar. All I know is I'm still in Alba, and the screams, they're louder now. Sometimes I think I can see shapes in the cornfield, moving between the stalks, and sometimes I hear a second voice in the house, right before 111. It always sounds like me, begging to be let out. If you ever find yourself driving through Alba, Pennsylvania, don't stop, don't stay. And whatever you do, don't listen when the train passes. Because if you hear the screams, even just once, it means you've already been heard, and they never stop listening. I don't know if I should even be writing this. Not because I'm afraid of people calling me crazy. I gave up worrying about that months ago. But because I honestly don't know if putting this into words will somehow bring it back. But I can't keep it in anymore. I need someone to hear it. Maybe someone else has gone through something similar. Maybe they can tell me what to do, or at least let me know I'm not alone. This happened last October, over a long weekend. Me, Danny and Mike, we're all in our late 20s, decided to go camping in Big Thicket National Preserve, Texas. It's a dense, swampy stretch of pine and hardwood forest, and it's got a weird reputation. People go missing there. Strange lights, voices in the woods, that kind of thing. But we weren't there for ghost hunting or anything. We were just three guys trying to escape the city and spend a few nights drinking, hiking, and talking shit around a campfire. We left Houston around noon on Friday and reached the preserve by about 3:30 p.m. The sun was starting to dip low by then, slanting through the trees and throwing long shadows on the trail. It had rained earlier in the week, so the air was heavy and cool, low 60s, with a faint, damp smell of rotting leaves. Perfect October weather. We hiked about 2 miles in, set up our tents near an old logging trail that looked mostly abandoned, and by nightfall we had a fire going. The first night was uneventful. We stayed up until around 1 a.m., talking about work, exes, that kind of thing. Mike told some lame story about a haunted hotel in Galveston. But we weren't spooked. The fire burned low, we put it out, and we crashed. Saturday morning we woke up to a light fog and the sound of birds. Everything felt normal. It wasn't until Saturday night that things got off. We started the fire around 11. We had this little Bluetooth speaker, and we were playing some classic rock, passing around a bottle of Evan Williams, just trying to enjoy the last night. We were laughing about something. I think it was Danny making fun of Mike for still being on his ex's Spotify plan, when suddenly the fire flared up like a gust of wind hit it, but the air was completely still. It didn't die back down, it just kept burning higher. At first we thought maybe we had added too much wood, but we hadn't added any in the last 10 minutes. It just kept roaring, hotter and taller than it should have been. I remember Danny stood up and moved back, squinting into it. "Is it just me," he said, "or is that burning too clean?" And he was right. There was no smoke, not like before, just flames, high and angry, burning bright orange with a strange bluish core. We all kind of stared at it, not saying much. Mike laughed. That forced kind of laugh when someone's trying to kill tension, and threw in a crushed beer can. It didn't melt. It didn't even blacken. It just sat there. "Yo, what the hell?" he muttered. Danny crouched near the fire, holding out his hand. "It's not even hot," he said. I walked over and felt it too. The heat was gone. It looked like fire. It moved like fire, but it didn't burn. There was no heat, no smell. It wasn't even crackling anymore. The usual hiss pop of burning wood was gone. It was just there, silent and wrong. Around 2 a.m., we decided to put it out. We poured the rest of the water on it, but it didn't react. No steam, no sizzle. The flames just kept going, unaffected. Mike dumped his beer on it. Nothing. Danny grabbed a shovel from his gear and tried throwing dirt on it, but the dirt just fell through the fire, like it wasn't touching anything. We stopped talking after that. I checked my phone, 2:17 a.m., still had 1 bar of service. I looked at Mike and said we should call someone, maybe a ranger. He just nodded, eyes locked on the fire. When I looked back down at my phone, the screen had gone dark, like it had powered off. But when I tried turning it back on, nothing happened, just dead. I asked the others, and both of them said the same thing. Their phones were off and wouldn't turn back on. That's when the noises started, not from the woods, from the fire. It wasn't fire sounds, it was like whispering, not in a language I could understand, more like 100 voices murmuring at once, just under the edge of hearing. And layered under that, there was something else, this low hum, not quite mechanical, almost musical. It sounded distant and close at the same time, like it was in our heads, but also coming from the fire. Mike started pacing, muttering to himself, his fists clenched. I saw Danny digging in his backpack, pulling out a small hunting knife, and holding it like he was expecting something to jump out of the trees. I just stood there, heart pounding, mouth dry. I felt like I was being watched, not just from the woods, but from inside the fire. And then it changed. The flames began to move, not randomly, but in patterns, shapes, almost like hands or mouths, forming and disappearing in the firelight. At one point, I swear I saw what looked like a face, wide and expressionless, staring out from the heart of the blaze. Just for a second, then gone. Danny suddenly yelled, "Nope, I'm done. I'm not staying here." He grabbed his pack and started walking down the trail with just his flashlight. Mike hesitated, then followed. I stood there, torn between going with them and not wanting to leave whatever this was alone. But the second I turned to leave, I heard something from behind me, not in the fire behind me, in the trees. A soft shuffle, like something moving through the underbrush. I spun around and flashed my light, but nothing was there. When I looked back at the fire, it had grown again, twice the size now, and the camp chairs, they were gone, just gone, like they'd never been there. I didn't hear Danny scream. That's what keeps me up most nights. I didn't hear anything, just that humming, and the crunch of my own footsteps as I ran down the trail, trying to catch up. I found them maybe half a mile in. Danny was standing in the middle of the trail, pale, flashlight shaking in his hand. Mike was sitting on the ground, rocking slightly. "I told him not to," Danny said when he saw me. "I told him not to, man." "Told who what?" He looked at me. Mike said he heard something in the woods, a woman, crying. He went off the trail. I told him not to, but I crouched next to Mike. "Hey, you okay? What happened?" He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. "She had no eyes," he whispered. "We didn't go back for our stuff. We just walked. We kept walking until the sky started to lighten." Eventually we hit a dirt road and flagged down a trucker. He drove us to a gas station in Councey. We didn't say much, just thanked him and waited until a park ranger came by. We told him we got turned around, lost our gear. He looked skeptical, especially when we told him where we'd camped. He said that trail had been closed for over a year after some sinkholes opened up. There weren't even supposed to be signs leading to it anymore. We went home, tried to forget, but 2 nights later, Mike called me around 3 a.m., said he hadn't slept, said the fire was still burning. I asked him what he meant. In my backyard, he said. I don't even have a pit, but it's there, it's just there, and it won't go out. I drove to his house. He wasn't lying. Middle of his yard, between patchy grass and an old trampoline, there was a small flame, just one, flickering gently, no smoke, no heat. We tried to put it out. Hose, dirt, nothing worked. He moved out a week later. Last I heard, he was living in New Mexico, off-grid. Said he couldn't be near any kind of fire, even candles set him off. Danny stopped talking to both of us. He deleted his social media, changed his number. I don't blame him. As for me, it followed me too. Not a fire, not like Mike, but sounds. Some nights, when I'm lying in bed, I hear that humming, that whispering, just below hearing. I can't make out the words, but I know it's not in my head. Once, I lit a match just to see. The flame was blue, not yellow, just blue. And I swear, for half a second, it laughed. So yeah, I don't know what we found out there. I don't know if it was a hallucination, or a gas pocket, or something older and darker that never wanted to be seen. But the worst part, we never touched it, never fed it anything. But that fire burned something that night, and I don't think it was just wood. I know how this is going to sound. If I read it from someone else, I'd think they were lying. Or maybe they were sleep deprived, maybe drunk, maybe grieving, but I was stone cold sober, no history of mental illness. And up until this summer, I had never believed in anything remotely supernatural. Ghost stories, cryptids, cursed objects. That stuff felt like urban myth or campfire filler. But this was different. This was something older, something patient, and it lives on Lake Palestine. I should explain. My name's Ben. I'm 34, and I've been living in Tyler, Texas for most of my life. I do freelance IT work, mostly remote, so I have a lot of flexibility, which is how I ended up spending the bulk of July house-sitting for a friend's dad, who owns a little cabin on the northwestern edge of Lake Palestine. It's not a touristy area, real quiet, mostly retirees and local fishermen. The cabin isn't anything fancy, but it has this beautiful wraparound porch and a narrow dock that stretches out onto the lake. He built it himself, back in the early 80s. My friend Jared asked if I could stay there while his dad was away in Colorado for a few weeks. Said he was worried about break-ins. Apparently, a few cabins in that area had been robbed over the past year, mostly during the summer when owners were away. I didn't mind. Free stay, peaceful lake, decent Wi-Fi. I figured I'd just work during the day and read or fish in the evenings. The first 10 days were completely normal, boring, even. The weather was sweltering. Most days hit 98 Fahrenheit or more, humid as hell. The cabin didn't have central AC, just some old window units that rattled like angry raccoons, so I spent a lot of time shirtless, sitting on the porch with a fan pointed at my face and a bottle of Shiner Bock sweating beside me. The lake was calm, too calm sometimes. The kind of stillness that almost makes your ears ring, like the world's waiting for something. I noticed that none of the other docks had people. There were maybe 4 other cabins visible from mine, 2 to the east, 1 further west, and 1 across the narrow cove. But I never saw anyone outside. No boats, no lights at night, no dogs barking. Just stillness, still water, still air. I figured it was the heat. Then, on the 11th day, July 14th, something changed. It was around 5:30 in the morning. I'd woken up early because the power had gone out, and the silence from the fan stopping jolted me awake. The air was already thick and warm, and the sun hadn't even risen yet. I went outside to check the breaker, barefoot, still in my boxers, when I noticed something. Someone was sitting at the end of the dock. I froze. It was still too dark to make out any details, just the outline of a figure, sitting upright, legs dangling over the edge, facing the lake, not moving. I assumed it was one of the neighbors, maybe someone out early fishing, but something felt off. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you just know someone's been there before you? That electric, nervous tension. That's what it felt like, except I wasn't in a room. I was standing outside, staring at a complete stranger on a private dock, in the pitch black of early morning. I called out, just a casual, "Hey, everything all right?" The figure didn't move, didn't look back, didn't flinch. I tried again. Hey, you're on private property. Still nothing. At that point, the logical part of my brain was fighting with the creeping anxiety in my chest. Maybe it was a homeless person. Maybe someone drunk. Maybe one of the other cabin owners, confused or high, or having a mental break. I didn't want to get too close, so I went back inside, locked the door, and called Jared. It went to voicemail. Then I texted him. Some guy's sitting at your dad's dock. Can I call the sheriff? 10 minutes later, the power came back on, and with it, the lights in the living room. I immediately looked outside. The dock was empty. I walked out again. The boards creaked under my feet. There was no one, not even wet footprints, just the lake, perfectly still, reflecting the grey-blue light of early dawn. Jared didn't text me back until 9 a.m. That's weird. There shouldn't be anyone out there. Sure, call the sheriff if you see him again. But I didn't see him again that day, or the next, until the 17th. That morning, I couldn't sleep. It was 4:45 a.m., and I was lying in bed, sweating and restless, when I heard something. The sound of water, not waves, more like a splash, like someone easing into the lake. I got up, went to the window. He was back, sitting at the edge of the dock again. Same posture, same stillness. Except this time, there was fog rolling off the water. Just a light mist, but it looked thicker around him, like it was clinging to his outline. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't just fog. It looked wrong, like it didn't move with the breeze, like it had weight. I didn't go outside this time. I just stared from the window, heart pounding. I grabbed my phone, turned on the video, and tried to zoom in. But when I looked at the screen, nothing, just an empty dock. I blinked, looked up. He was still there, back at the phone, empty. I don't know how long I watched, maybe 15 minutes. He never turned, never shifted. Eventually, the mist began to burn off with the rising sun, and by 6:15, he was gone. I didn't go back to sleep. Instead, I did something stupid. I asked around. I drove into the nearest gas station, this little place called Simmons Stop, and struck up a conversation with the old guy behind the counter. Name tag said Reggie. I asked him if he knew anything about a man who sometimes sits on the dock near Point Dexter Cove. That was the name of the little inlet where the cabin sat. Reggie's face went slack. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "You saw him." I paused. "So it's a thing." Reggie didn't laugh, didn't smile, just looked down at the counter. "Mid-July," he muttered. "Always mid-July." I pressed him, gently. Reggie said there's been stories going back decades. Nobody agrees on who the man is. Some say he drowned there. Others say he's looking for someone he lost. A woman, a kid, depends on who you ask. But they all agree on one thing: don't talk to him. Why? I asked. Reggie didn't answer that either. He just shook his head and said, "He's not asking for company. He's looking for someone." The rest of the day, I couldn't shake that phrase, looking for someone. I tried to be logical. Maybe it was a local, someone with memory problems or trauma. Maybe he lost someone in the lake. Maybe he's not dangerous, just stuck. But deep down, I didn't believe that. Because that night, something else happened. It was about 1:30 a.m. I was asleep when I heard the creak of the porch steps. Not loud, just deliberate, one at a time. Then a knock, soft, almost polite. 3 taps. I didn't move. I just lay there, heart thudding so loud I thought it would shake the walls. Another knock, this time on the window. My bedroom faces the lake. I could see the faint outline of the dock from bed. I got up, slowly, and peeked between the blinds. There was no one at the window, but the dock was wrong, because the man wasn't sitting. He was standing now, at the very edge, facing the cabin. And even though the night was pitch black, I swear to God I could see his eyes, reflecting the moonlight, not glowing, not red, just watching. I closed the blinds, grabbed the bat I kept by the bed, sat in the corner of the room like a child waiting for morning. By sunrise, he was gone again. I called the sheriff that day, reported a trespasser. A deputy came out, took a quick look around, and said he didn't see any signs of forced entry or footprints. Probably just a kid messing around, he said. I asked if they'd heard other reports. A man on a dock, maybe over the years. The deputy got quiet, then shrugged. People talk, he said, but no one ever files a report. When I asked why, he just said, wouldn't change anything. I stayed inside that night, didn't look out the windows, didn't go near the porch, but sleep never came. Because around 3 a.m., the dock started to creak. Not like footsteps, not at first, more like someone shifting their weight, back and forth. And then, for the first time, I heard his voice. It was faint, raspy, like someone trying to speak after a long silence. "Not yet," he whispered. I don't know how I heard it so clearly. It was like it was inside the room. Not yet. Then silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the week. Every night, he was there. Sometimes sitting, sometimes standing, sometimes closer. Once, I swear he was halfway up the dock, always watching, always waiting, and always, just before he vanished, I'd hear that same whisper. Not yet. I left on July 22nd. Jared called, surprised. I lied, said I got a job in Houston, and had to cut it short. I didn't want to sound insane, but I couldn't take another night. I didn't go back to Tyler. I drove straight to my sister's place in Austin, slept on her couch, didn't tell her anything for the first week. I just needed to be around people, noise, lights, life. Then, about 2 days after I arrived, I got a text from Jared. Did you leave something on the dock? I felt my stomach drop. I wrote back, what do you mean? He replied, my dad got home today, said there were footprints, bare ones, wet, leading all the way up to the house. I didn't answer. I couldn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the lights on. Every time the house creaked, I jumped. I stared at the window, waiting, but nothing came. The next day, I started digging. Online, I found 3 Reddit threads. 2 were deleted. The third was an old post from 2013, buried in a thread about Texas urban legends. Someone had asked, what's the creepiest thing you've seen on a lake in East Texas? One reply, buried way down, just said, old man, Doc, don't let him know your name. I stared at that for a long time, because that first night, when I called out to him, when I said, hey, everything all right, I'd followed it with something else, a habit, a reflex. Hey, everything all right? I'm Ben. It's been 2 weeks since then, and last night, at 2:12 a.m., my sister's dog started barking at the back window. When I went to check, heart in my throat, there was no one there, but the grass in the yard was wet, like someone had been standing there, watching, waiting. I wasn't going to post this. Not really because I'm scared, though I'd be lying if I said I haven't felt that way, especially at night. I just never wanted to give it shape, if that makes sense. Some things feel safer when they're left unspoken, like maybe if you don't put it into words, it won't follow you home. But lately, I've been dreaming of that bridge again, the one west of Gainesville, Elm Fork Bridge. Maybe posting this will help me sleep again. I first crossed it in July of 2017, sometime after midnight. I'd just gotten back from my cousin's wedding in Denton and decided to stay with my friend Ben for a few days. He was living out in this old house near Munimal, about 30 minutes northwest of Gainesville. Nothing fancy, just a beat-up rental farmhouse he and 2 of his co-workers shared to save money. Middle of nowhere, no Wi-Fi, spotty reception. You had to drive 10 minutes just to get gas. I didn't mind. I was in a weird place back then, mentally. I'd just broken off an engagement and left a job I hated, and I was doing that thing where you float around in your own head pretending you're okay. Ben and I had been friends since high school, and he was one of the few people who didn't push me to explain myself. He just handed me a beer, made a place for me on the couch, and let me sit with the silence. I think that's why I didn't say anything the first time I felt it. The first night I stayed there, I remember lying awake on the couch in the living room. It was hot, no AC, just a ceiling fan ticking like a clock and stirring the muggy air. The others were asleep. The house was quiet, too quiet. I remember that so clearly. The way the silence felt, wrong, not peaceful, not comforting, hollow, heavy, like something was holding its breath. I brushed it off, told myself I was just jittery from the drive and the coffee we'd had around 9, but I didn't sleep much. I kept opening my eyes, checking the windows, expecting to see someone, or something, just standing out there, watching. The next few days were uneventful. We drank, grilled outside, shot the shit like we were still teenagers. But every night, that feeling came back, that breathless quiet, that heaviness in the air, like something invisible pressing on the walls. I only asked about it once. We were sitting on the porch around dusk, drinking Lone Stars, while the crickets screamed in the trees. I turned to Ben and said, kind of half joking, hey, is this place haunted or something? He didn't laugh, didn't even smile. He just stared out into the tree line and said, I don't know if I'd call it haunted, but yeah, it's weird out here. He wouldn't say more than that. I thought maybe he was messing with me, but there was this seriousness in his voice that didn't sound like a joke. The weirdest part is how subtle it all was. Nothing overtly scary, no shadows darting across the floor, no TVs turning on by themselves, just this building pressure at night, like the air was too still. And sometimes, if I was lying awake and listening, I'd swear I could hear something breathing outside the window. Not an animal, not a person, just breathing. Rhythmic, slow, wet. On the fourth night, it finally escalated. I'd gone into Gainesville that evening to get food and kill time while the guys worked late. Ben had suggested I take FM 678 instead of the highway. It was more direct though, kind of rural, so that's what I did. The sun had just gone down when I started the drive back, and I remember the exact time because I checked my phone when I turned off the main road, 9:18 p.m. It was still warm out, 87 degrees according to the truck's dash, and the sky was that kind of deep orange grey you only see in July, where the light lingers just a little too long. I was about 10 minutes out when I saw the bridge. I hadn't noticed it on the way in, probably because I was following GPS and not paying attention, but now in the half-light it stood out. A narrow, rickety wooden bridge spanning the Elm Fork of the Trinity River. 2 rusted metal guardrails. No lights, no signs, just a wooden structure that looked older than the road itself. And as I drove onto it, I swear to God the temperature dropped, like immediately. I remember looking at the dash again, 87 degrees, but inside the cab it felt cold enough to see your breath. I even reached for the AC knob thinking maybe I'd turned it too far by accident, but the thing was off. I slowed down, rolled the window down a crack. Outside I could hear it, breathing, long slow breaths, like something massive was just beneath the bridge, exhaling through its nose. The hair on the back of my neck went stiff. I pressed the gas and got off that bridge as fast as I could. When I got back, I didn't say anything to Ben. I just sat on the porch, drinking and trying to shake the feeling. The next night, we lost power. A thunderstorm had rolled through around 2 a.m. I remember because the wind woke me up, and I sat by the window watching the lightning hit the treetops. Then the lights went out, all of them, even the porch light. The fan stopped. The hum of the fridge died. The house fell completely still. That's when the knocking started. Not at the door, at the window. Slow, deliberate taps, like fingernails on glass. First the living room, where I was sleeping. Then the kitchen. Then one of the back bedrooms. Moving around the house like someone circling it, trying to find a way in. I thought maybe it was a branch in the wind, until it stopped when I stood up. Just stopped mid-knock, like it knew I was listening. I stayed awake until dawn, sitting in the middle of the living room with a kitchen knife I'd grabbed from the drawer. When the sun finally rose and the power came back on, I told Ben everything, about the bridge, the cold, the breathing, the knocks. He didn't laugh. He just said, "Yeah, it started after I moved in too." According to him, there was a local story, nothing official, just a kind of urban legend. Apparently back in the 50s, a family went missing near that stretch of river. Whole family, father, mother, 2 sons. No signs of foul play, no bodies, just vanished. Some said the dad had gone crazy and drowned them in the river before hanging himself under the bridge. Others said they just ran off. Whatever happened, people started reporting strange things afterward. Drivers getting sudden chills crossing the bridge. Unexplained engine stalls. A few said they saw faces in the water, not bodies, but faces just below the surface. Eyes open, mouths moving. A couple years ago, some kids dared each other to spend the night on the bridge. Only 2 came back. The third was found a week later, floating downstream. No signs of injury, no water in his lungs, like he'd just stopped breathing. I thought Ben was trying to scare me, but he looked pale when he said it. "I don't go near that bridge anymore," he told me. "Not since last fall. It doesn't like when you pay attention to it." I stayed one more night. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I thanked Ben, said I needed to head back home. He understood, but I never made it to the highway. My GPS rerouted, some construction near I-35, and without thinking, I followed it, and that's how I ended up at Elm Fork Bridge again. It was 10:42 a.m., bright, clear day, 94 degrees, birds chirping, nothing ominous at all, until I drove onto the bridge. The temperature dropped, from 94 to what felt like 60 in an instant. I slammed the brakes, rolled the window down, no wind, no movement, just that breathing again, louder this time, closer, and wet, like something was exhaling through a mouthful of water. I looked in the rearview mirror. There was a woman standing at the start of the bridge, mid-30s, pale skin, brown dress soaked through like she'd been in the river, hair plastered to her face. She was barefoot, and her arms hung limply at her sides. She didn't move, she didn't blink. I hit the gas. The second my tires left the wood and hit pavement, the air warmed, the breathing stopped. When I looked back, she was gone. I took a different route home, swore I'd never go near that place again. That should have been the end of it. But it followed me. The cold, the silence, the breathing. It doesn't happen every night, but it happens often enough. I'll wake up at 3:12 a.m., always the same time, and the room will be freezing, even in the middle of summer. My phone won't turn on. The air will feel hollow, still, like something is watching me from the corner, just outside my field of view. Sometimes I hear it, the wet breath. Sometimes there's knocking, and sometimes, not often, but enough to know I'm not imagining it. I'll glance into the mirror or the window and see her standing behind me, drenched, mouth open, eyes wide like she's screaming underwater, but no sound ever comes out. I moved twice, changed phones, changed numbers, burned the clothes I was wearing that day. Nothing helps. I think it marks you, the bridge. It wants something, and I think maybe it's lonely. So if you ever find yourself west of Gainesville, driving at night, don't take FM 678, don't cross Elm Fork Bridge, and if you have to, don't look in the mirror. I've never written anything on Reddit before, and I wouldn't now if this story hadn't stayed with me for the last 7 years like a splinter I can't dig out. My therapist suggested I write it down. Externalize the memory, she said, but I can't share this with anyone I know, so here I am. It happened in July of 2018, in Lampasas County, Texas. I was 17 at the time and visiting my uncle's ranch for the summer. He and my cousin Travis lived on a few hundred acres of scrubland about 15 minutes north of town. If you know Lampasas, you know it's mostly rolling hills, prickly pear, a few lazy rivers, and a whole lot of heat. The kind of place where the air hums with cicadas and everything feels just a little too still sometimes. I'd gone out there for a change of pace. My mum thought it would be good for me, away from phones, internet, and what she called my doom-scrolling teen brain. Uncle Rick was quiet and practical, a Vietnam vet who ran cattle and didn't talk much. Travis was a year younger than me, 15 then, but taller, wiry, always tanned from being outside. He wasn't the friendliest kid, but we got along well enough. Spent most days hiking, shooting beer cans with his .22, swimming in the stock tanks, normal country kid stuff. What I'm about to tell you happened the second week I was there. It was a Tuesday, I remember because I was supposed to go back home on a Friday, and this messed everything up. That morning, Uncle Rick had left early to take a sick heifer to the vet in Burnett. He told us we could clear some deadfall on the north side of the property if we were feeling useful. Travis had another idea. There's a place out past the cattle fence, he said over breakfast. I want to show you. The weather was typical, low 90s by 10 a.m., cloudless. Dust kicked up behind our boots as we walked. We passed the west paddock, then crawled through a barbed wire gap that separated the grazed land from a stretch of fallow field. Uncle Rick rarely went out that way anymore, said it wasn't worth maintaining. The grass was waist high, golden and dry, with a few mesquite trees scattered like lonely scarecrows. I asked Travis what we were looking for. You'll see, he said. We hiked another 20 minutes, no trails, just heat and bugs and the occasional rabbit darting through the brush. Eventually we came to a clearing, and that's when I saw it. Dead center in the field was a swing set, not an old rusted one either. It looked new, clean metal bars, bright blue powder coat, plastic seats with yellow ropes that looked like they'd just come out of the packaging. No weathering, no bird shit, no spider webs, just there, like someone had built it yesterday. I thought it might be some kind of prank, maybe hunters left it, or teenagers dragged it out as a joke, but it didn't make sense. There was no road, no path, no tire tracks, nothing. Just untouched field and this pristine swing set. Been here a while, Travis said, kicking at the dirt. Found it last summer. You didn't tell your dad? He shook his head. Nah, he wouldn't care. Just told me to stay out of that field. That gave me pause. He said that before you found this? Yeah, long before. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I stepped closer. The structure was basic. 2 swings, 4 legs, crossbar at the top. No brand name, no stickers, no anchors. It wasn't even sunk into the ground, just resting there like a piece of stage equipment. I come out here sometimes, Travis said. You want to swing? I looked at him, waiting for a smirk, a joke, but he was dead serious. I'm good. He nodded like he expected that, then walked over and sat on one of the swings, gave a little push with his boots, and started rocking. I just stood there, watching him. The ropes didn't creak, the seat didn't shift. It was like the thing had never been used before. You really just found this? I asked. Yep. And you don't think it's weird that it's perfectly clean in the middle of nowhere? He shrugged. I guess. How often do you come here? Once a week. Maybe. Sometimes more. I must have made a face, because he added, it's peaceful out here. You don't have to think. I remember staring at him for a long time. Something about the way he was moving on that swing. Back and forth, just felt off, mechanical, too smooth, like he wasn't even trying. Eventually he stopped. "It only works for me," he said. "What? I brought Maddie out here once. She couldn't swing, seat wouldn't move, just sat there like it was stuck in cement. I tried to keep my voice even. You think that's because it doesn't like other people?" He didn't answer, just stood up and walked away from it. I wanted to go home right then, but I didn't want to seem like a baby, so I followed. We didn't talk much on the way back. I kept looking over my shoulder like we were being watched, but the field was empty and silent except for the wind in the grass. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked like old wood does, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw that swing set. How clean it was, how still the ropes hung when no one touched them. I finally drifted off around 3 a.m. The next day, Travis was different, quieter. He didn't eat breakfast, didn't want to go outside, spent most of the afternoon lying in bed with his eyes open. Around dinner, I heard him muttering. I leaned in and heard him say, "She's swinging now, she figured it out." I asked him what he meant. He wouldn't answer. By Thursday morning, he was gone. Uncle Rick was out feeding the horses when I knocked on his door. No sign of Travis. His bed was made, his boots were gone, so was his knife. We searched the property for hours. By late afternoon, I'd broken and told Rick about the swing set. I expected him to yell or call me a liar, but he just went quiet. Then he said, "I told him not to go past that fence." We walked out together. The sun was low and orange, the shadows long. When we got to the field, the swing set was gone. I swear to God, I am not crazy. The clearing was there. The grass was pressed down where it had been, but the structure itself, gone. No drag marks, no footprints, no sign it had ever existed. Uncle Rick didn't say a word, just turned around and walked back to the house. I followed, numb and nauseous. We never found Travis. The sheriff organized a search party. Bloodhounds, helicopters, thermal drones, nothing. It was like he'd just vanished. They checked the rivers, the wells, the nearby roads, found his pocket knife a mile away in a tree stump, blade buried to the hilt. No other sign. My mum picked me up that weekend. I told her I was done with country life. I never went back. For a while I convinced myself it was trauma, grief. Maybe Travis ran away. Maybe he got lost. Maybe the swing set was a heat stroke hallucination. But I couldn't explain what happened next. 2 years later, in March 2020, just before the lockdown, I got a message on Facebook. No profile photo, just the name field guest. The message said, "She's swinging now, it only works for her." That's it. I didn't respond, blocked the account. I wish that was the end of it. I really do. But last year, August 2024, I drove through Lampasas on my way to San Angelo. Hadn't been back in years, thought I was over it. I stopped for gas at a station just outside town. When I came out of the store, there was a girl sitting on the curb, maybe 8 or 9, pale skin, long black hair, wearing overalls and no shoes. She looked up at me and smiled. Then she said, "Wanna swing?" My stomach dropped. I didn't answer, just got in my car and drove. Didn't stop till I hit Midland. That girl, I don't know who she was. Maybe nothing, maybe a coincidence, but I haven't slept right since. Some nights, around 3 a.m, I hear something in my backyard, a faint creaking, like a rope under tension, like someone slowly swinging back and forth. Back and forth. It's always gone by morning. I never saw Travis again. His case is still technically open, but there's no more search, no more updates, just an empty bed, and a family that stopped talking about it. I've looked into similar stories, found a few mentions of new playgrounds in remote places, one in Utah, one in Arkansas, always the same pattern. Someone disappears, and something clean and impossible is left behind. I don't know what it is, I don't want to know, but if you ever find yourself in the middle of nowhere and you come across a swing set that looks brand new, clean ropes, no rust, no footsteps around it, don't touch it, don't sit down, and if you hear it swinging, even though there's no wind, run. I'm a bow hunter. Not the kind that posts every kill online or wears camo to the grocery store. I hunt for meat, not trophies, and I've been doing it for most of my life. I grew up in Webb County, Texas, just outside Laredo. My dad used to take me out every season since I was 9. There's a quiet out there that I can't find anywhere else. Not in town, not at work, not even at home with my wife and kid. Just that open sky, dust in your mouth, and the kind of silence that feels heavy. 3 years ago, I bought a small patch of land about 40 minutes northeast of Laredo, 10 acres. It's mostly mesquite, brush, and a dry creek bed that runs through the far end. Nothing special. I set up a feeder and a few trail cams. One of those was mounted low on a tree facing the feeder. The other pointed toward a little game trail near the creek bed. I'd go out every couple of weeks to check the SD cards. This all started in November, just before Thanksgiving. On the 19th, it was a Sunday, I went out early to refill the feeder and swap out the cards. Weather was mild, 63 degrees by 8 a.m., overcast with a little wind, perfect for deer movement. I remember thinking I might even sit in the blind for an hour or two, just to see what came around. But I ended up getting a call from my wife. Our toddler had a fever, so I just swapped the cards and left. That night, after things settled down at home, I plugged the first SD card into my laptop. This one was from the feeder cam, the usual stuff, some nighttime shots of a doe, a couple of hogs sniffing around. There was a nice 8-point buck too. I made a mental note of his timestamp, 4:17 a.m., November 18. I was flipping through the thumbnails when I noticed something off in one of the frames. It was timestamped 4:53 a.m. The quality wasn't great. Infrared trail cams aren't known for their resolution, but there was a figure standing near the edge of the feeder light. A person, upright, facing the camera, just standing there. He wasn't close, maybe 20 feet back from the feeder. No visible weapon, no flashlight, nothing that suggested he was hunting, just still. At first I figured maybe it was some ranch hand from a nearby property, maybe lost or drunk or just curious. But the land is fenced, no gates left open, no footprints. I zoomed in. The face was a blur, like the motion sensor hadn't caught the expression clearly, but I could tell he was looking directly at the camera. It unsettled me. People don't usually wander around private hunting land at 5 a.m. without a light, especially not that deep in the brush. I pulled up the second SD card from the cam near the creek bed. Nothing for the first dozen images. A raccoon, a fox, and then, at 4:58 a.m., another shot. Same man, different cam. This time he was much closer, right in front of the lens, his head tilted slightly. His eyes, or what I could see of them, were wide open, like way too wide. It didn't look natural. Again, no light, no weapon, just standing there. I backed up from my laptop. I can't explain it. I've seen weird stuff in the woods before. Feral dogs, coyotes acting strange, even people camping where they shouldn't. But this felt different. Like whoever he was, he knew exactly where the cameras were, and he wanted me to see him. I told my wife, but I downplayed it. Just said someone might have trespassed. I didn't tell her about the close-up shot. No need to freak her out, especially with our kid being sick. The next morning, I filed a non-emergency report with the Webb County Sheriff's Office, just in case. They asked if anything was stolen or damaged. I said no. They told me to call if I saw anyone in person, and to maybe add some signage. No trespassing, cameras in use, basic stuff. I bought some new locks for the gate, and added 2 more cameras. One facing the entrance, the other up in a tree about 10 feet high, overlooking the blind. I didn't go back out until December. It stayed quiet for a while. I got normal footage, deer, armadillos, a bobcat once, but nothing out of place. I started to think maybe it had just been some random drifter passing through. Until December 22. I was out doing a final hunt before Christmas. That morning, the air was cold, 41 degrees at sunrise, and the wind was still, too still. I remember how quiet it was. No bird song. Not even rustling in the brush, just dead air. I was in the blind by 6 a.m. By 7:30, I hadn't seen a thing, not even a rabbit. I started to feel watched. I know how that sounds, but it wasn't just paranoia. It was like I was being measured. I stuck it out until 9, then decided to leave. On the way back to my truck, I passed the feeder and noticed something odd. A pile of small stones stacked in the dirt nearby, like someone had deliberately placed them there. 7 stones, arranged in a little cone. Not natural, no animal did that. When I got home, I checked the SD cards. The one from the tree cam above the blind showed something at 4:03 a.m. Same man. This time, he was crouched just outside the blind, less than 10 feet from where I'd sat for hours. No light, no sound, just crouched, looking up toward the lens. His face was clearer this time, pale, dirty, lips cracked like he hadn't drunk water in days, and those eyes wide and unblinking. I shut the laptop. Didn't sleep that night. On December 23rd, I went back out with my cousin, Armando. He's ex-military, a good guy to have in weird situations. We checked the whole property, found no tracks, no sign of camping, no trash. The stone pile was gone. I told him what I saw on the cams, showed him the photos. He didn't say much, just nodded and kept scanning the tree line. Before we left, He suggested I set up a live cellular feed on the cams, so I could see the footage remotely in real time. I ordered 2 new SpyPoint Link micro cameras that same day. I installed them on New Year's Eve. Clear, chilly morning, 38 degrees, barely any wind. I had a gut feeling while I was out there, that same sense of being watched. I didn't stay long. That night at 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed, motion detected on the blind cam. I opened the app, and there he was, standing, looking directly into the lens again. This time, his head was tilted almost 90 degrees, like it was broken at the neck. His mouth was open, not smiling, just gaping. His eyes were so wide, I could see the whites even in night vision. I started recording the screen, but the feed cut out after 5 seconds. When it came back, he was gone. No movement alert, no follow-up shot, just static, then the empty brush. I haven't gone back out there since. I reported it again. Sheriff's office said they'd send someone to sweep the area. They found nothing. No prints, no signs of trespass. They suggested maybe it was a prank. But who drives 40 miles into private land, in freezing weather, at 3 a.m., just to mess with someone's trail cam? And how did he know exactly where every lens was? That was almost 2 years ago. I sold the land last fall, haven't hunted since. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. I never gave anyone access to that camera feed. It was encrypted, just me and the app on my phone. Last week, August 2, I got a push notification at 3:13 a.m. Motion detected, blind cam. That camera should have been offline for almost a year. I never transferred it to the new owner. The solar panel should have died long ago. I clicked the app, it loaded, and for 3 seconds, I saw the feed. No trees, no brush, just a wall, a white wall, dirty, cracked. And then he stepped into frame, still pale, still silent, still staring. He's indoors now, and the background looked a lot like my garage. I don't know how. I've checked the camera, it's not there. I've swept the whole house. I don't sleep more than 2 hours at a time anymore. Every creak in the walls, every time the AC kicks on, I flinch. I don't go outside after dark. I don't hunt. I don't even like looking into my backyard. The police won't help. There's no crime to report. I've changed my phone, factory reset everything. The app's gone, but sometimes, at night, I still hear it. That faint, familiar click from my phone, motion detected. And sometimes, I swear I hear it from the garage too. That little red blink of a trail cam coming to life. I didn't think much about posting this until last week, when I found the receipt. It was tucked in the side pocket of my glove compartment, yellowed and curled like it had been there forever. Which is weird, because I always clean out my car. Always. But there it was, dated June 17th, 2023, timestamped 1:26 a.m., at a gas station in Diboll, Texas. Just a few minutes before everything happened. Just a few minutes before I stopped trusting my memory. I've tried to write this out so many times. I don't know why it's so hard. Maybe it's because the moment I start, I can hear it again. The silence inside that place. Not a peaceful silence, a watching silence, like breath being held in every wall. Anyway, it happened in East Texas about a year ago. I was driving home from visiting my cousin in Lufkin. She had just had her first baby, and I stayed way later than I meant to. Baby pictures, old movies, wine. I didn't realize how dark the roads were going to get. I'd only been out there once before, and I thought I could retrace my steps without GPS. My phone had been acting up all day, overheating and randomly shutting off. I figured I'd just follow the signs and make it back to Nacogdoches by midnight. I ended up turning off on some FM road around 12:45 a.m., thinking it was a shortcut. I remember that detail because I looked at the clock. I passed a dead possum in the road, its eyes still open in my headlights, and I remember thinking, this looks like one of those creepy roads in a campfire story. I laughed at myself, trying to push off the unease, but that laughter felt hollow. My high beams stretched into darkness for what looked like miles. No houses, no signs, just trees leaning in from both sides like they were whispering to each other. After about 15 minutes, I realized I was lost. Fully, embarrassingly lost. I pulled over, turned my phone back on, and waited for it to catch a signal. Nothing, just searching, and a low battery warning. I sat there for a few minutes, trying to remember the last gas station I'd seen. I thought I could maybe backtrack, but everything behind me looked the same. Trees, ditches, more trees. That's when I saw the light. It was faint at first, a soft white glow coming from up ahead, a few hundred yards down the road, maybe tucked behind the trees. My first thought was relief, civilization, a house, maybe a place I could stop and ask for directions, or at least a working phone. As I got closer, the light resolved into something strange. It was a small white building, perfectly square from the front. There was a steeple, not tall, maybe just 10 feet, with a cross that glowed faintly in the dark. Every window glowed yellow-white, like it was full of warm light inside. But there was no sign, no mailbox, no road sign, no gravel driveway, just a worn-down strip of grass leading from the road to the door, and no parking lot. I slowed down and stared. The building looked new, in a weird way. Fresh white paint, not a spot of dirt. The steps leading up to the door were clean, but it was in the middle of nowhere. There weren't even any tire tracks in the grass, no cars, nothing to suggest people had been there recently. I should have kept driving, I know that now, but the light looked so inviting. It had that golden Sunday evening kind of warmth. Something about it made me think of potlucks and old ladies in floral dresses. Comfort. I remember thinking, maybe it's an old church that still holds midnight prayer services or something. So I pulled over. Not onto a shoulder, there wasn't one, just eased onto the grass and turned off the engine. Everything went dark except that little glowing church. I walked across the grass. The night air was thick and still, not even a breeze. I didn't hear any crickets or frogs, which struck me as odd. I grew up in the country. There's always something making noise at night. The door was wooden, with a brass handle and a small window cut into the top half. I stepped up and looked inside, and this is the part that's hard to explain. It was full. The church was completely full. Every pew was occupied. Men, women, children, all sitting perfectly still, facing forward. The light I'd seen was coming from these old brass chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. There were candles on the altar too, real ones, flickering softly. I could see the back of everyone's heads, grey hair, dark hair, braids. Some of the men wore old-style suits. I mean old, like 1940s, 1950s. A few women had hats with veils, but the thing that struck me most was how quiet it was. You'd expect some coughing, someone whispering, a kid moving around, but no one moved. No one even shifted in their seat. It was like I'd walked in on a moment frozen in time. I should have walked away. I should have gotten in my car and driven until I hit a Waffle House and just waited for the sun to come up. But something about the stillness felt hypnotic. I opened the door. The hinges didn't creak. It didn't even feel heavy. I stepped inside, and immediately the air changed. It was warm, but not stuffy. It smelled faintly of old wood and melted wax, and something else. Something sweet, like decaying flowers. There was a faint humming in my ears, like when you walk into a building with weird acoustics. The door closed gently behind me on its own. No one turned to look at me. I just stood there in the back, confused and trying to understand what I was seeing. I didn't recognize any of the hymns they were singing. Wait, sorry, that's not right. They weren't singing. There was no music, no pastor, no sermon, just people sitting there, staring forward. I tried to clear my throat, maybe make a sound to see if anyone reacted. But the second I moved, my ears popped, like I'd changed altitudes. And suddenly it felt like something had noticed me. Not someone, something. It's hard to describe. But it felt like the air itself had shifted its attention, like the walls were suddenly watching. I got this overwhelming urge to sit down, not out of fear, out of obligation, like I was late for something, and now I had to take my place. There was an empty spot in the last pew, far left. I couldn't see the faces of the people I'd be sitting next to, just the backs of their heads. I sat down. I didn't mean to. My body just moved, like I was sleepwalking. As soon as I sat, my hands folded in my lap, my breathing slowed, and I felt calm, not safe, just numb. I think I sat there for a long time, long enough for the candles to burn down a bit. The longer I sat, the less I thought about where I was, or why I'd come. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't anything. I just was, until the baby started crying. Somewhere near the front, a soft, pitiful cry rose up, sharp and sudden, like it had been holding it in for a long time. And in that instant, I felt every hair on my neck rise, because it was wrong. The cry didn't echo right. It sounded like it came from inside my head. I blinked, and when I did, I saw just for a second that the people in the pews weren't sitting still anymore. They were twitching, like a glitch in a video, just a flicker, hands spasming, heads jerking. Then they were still again. I stood up, and that's when the nearest person to me turned around. She was maybe in her 70s, grey hair pulled back into a bun. Her face looked normal for half a second, and then it didn't. Her eyes were too wide. Her mouth was stretched open, just a little too far, like it had been pulled at the corners. She didn't blink, didn't move, just stared at me. I whispered, "I'm sorry." I backed out of the pew, turned toward the door, and realized it was farther away than it should have been, like the room had stretched. I started walking fast, then running. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if they were all staring now. I grabbed the door handle. It was ice cold. I pulled it open and stepped out into the night. The air hit me like a wave. Crickets, wind, the smell of pine needles, the normal sounds of East Texas at night. My car was right where I left it. I got in, locked the doors, and peeled out so fast I nearly hit the ditch. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station on the outskirts of town. The clerk gave me a weird look. I must have looked insane, but I bought a Red Bull and asked him if he knew about a small white church out on FM 21008 with no parking lot. He said there wasn't anything like that out there, just woods. I asked again the next morning, once I was calm. I talked to a deputy at the local station. I gave him the intersection, described the building. He shook his head. "There's no church out there, ma'am. Not for miles." I thought maybe I'd imagined it, that something had messed with my mind. The late hour, the stress, a panic attack. But then I found the receipt, dated, timed, right before I saw it. I still drive that way sometimes during the day, trying to find the spot, just to prove it was real. But there's nothing out there. No road cuts, no foundations, just endless trees and grass, and the same stretch of silence. But sometimes, when the sky's just starting to go dark, and the shadows stretch across the trees, I swear I see a faint light between the branches, and I keep driving, every time, faster. I don't know where to start, so I'll just say it. I think I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. And I don't mean like someone cheating or something normal like that. I mean something that doesn't fit in the world, something that shouldn't exist. This happened in July, about a month ago, in Kerrville, Texas. If you know the area, you'll know it's this kind of sleepy, tucked-away town in the hill country. Lots of cedar, winding roads, and way too many deer crossing signs. I'd gone to a cookout that Saturday, July 13th, and I haven't really been the same since. The cookout was at my buddy Troy's place, off of Thompson Drive near the river. He and his girlfriend Kelsey had just moved into this new rental house, white with green shutters, kind of rundown, but they'd spruced it up pretty good. They were excited to host something, so they did this all-out barbecue, brisket, ribs, cornhole boards, beers in the cooler, the whole deal. Probably 15-20 people showed up. It was one of those Texas summer nights where the sun doesn't really go down until like 8:45, and the air doesn't cool off until well after that. I remember checking the weather on my phone when I got there. It was still 97 degrees at 7:30 p.m, and the humidity made it feel like you were breathing through a wet rag. But it was good. Familiar faces, laughing, music playing low from a speaker someone brought out onto the porch. One of those nights that feels lazy in a good way, where the whole evening kind of blends into itself. I didn't even plan to stay late. I had work the next morning, Sunday shift at the feed store out on Harper Road, and I live up closer to Ingram, so it's like a 25-minute drive back home if traffic's nice. I told Troy I'd dip out early, maybe 10:30, but you know how it is. Someone brings out shots, someone else starts a dumb drinking game. I wasn't drunk, but I'd had 2 shiners and a little bit of whiskey, enough to feel warm behind the eyes. The last time I checked the time, it was 11:06 p.m, and I remember because I texted my roommate Jake that I was about to head out. Leaving now, be back in 30. He didn't reply. I said my goodbyes, grabbed my keys and left. Troy's house sits just past a small dip in the road, and from there you head back up onto Harper Road and then take Goat Creek to get to Ingram. It's not a complicated drive, and I've done it a dozen times, probably more. I hadn't even pulled 2 miles from the house when I noticed it. There was a house where there wasn't one before. I was driving slow, like 35, partially because deer like to leap out around that area, and partially because I was just relaxed. Windows cracked, music low. I remember the song too, Southern Cross by Crosby, Stills and Nash. I've always loved that one. I was singing along when my headlights caught something on the right side of the road. At first I thought it was just a new build. There's always construction popping up, especially out toward the outskirts. But this didn't look new. It looked old, not abandoned, just aged, worn. It sat maybe 20 yards back from the road, in a clearing that I swear was just mesquite brush a few days ago. A single-story house, the kind with horizontal wood siding, weathered to a dull grey, no lights in the windows, no car in the gravel driveway. But the strangest thing was the mailbox. Bright red, brand new, like it had been installed that afternoon. Numbers stenciled in white, 8215 Borden Lane. That part threw me off, because Borden Lane doesn't exist. Not around there anyway. I know every cross street in that area. There's no Borden Lane. I slowed almost to a stop. I even remember leaning forward a bit, squinting, like that would somehow make the house make sense. My headlights caught something in one of the windows. A flicker of movement. Could have been a curtain. Could have been someone inside. That's when I sent the second text. There's a house where there wasn't one before. It looks so stupid now, like a joke, like something you'd send after smoking too much or trying to freak someone out. But I swear to God I was serious. I was unsettled. Something about the way the house just was, like it had always been there, like I was the one who was wrong, got under my skin. I waited for Jake to reply. He didn't. After about 20 seconds of idling, I put my foot back on the gas, just kept driving. I didn't look back. I made it home a little before 11:30. Jake was already asleep, his door shut. I microwaved some leftover mac and cheese, watched one episode of Frasier, and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the house. I even opened Google Maps on my phone, zoomed in on the stretch of road where I saw it. Nothing, no driveway, no house, no Borden Lane. I thought about texting Troy, but it felt dumb. What would I even say? Instead, I just tossed and turned until around 3 a.m. when I finally passed out. The next morning, I overslept my alarm. I was supposed to be at the store by 8, and I didn't wake up until 8:17. I rushed to get dressed and didn't even have time for coffee, which always puts me in a bad mood. It was hot again, one of those days where the air feels heavy. I didn't think about the house again until I got off work around 5. On the way home, I decided to detour past the spot, just to see. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe some sign of construction or some kind of logical explanation, but there was nothing. No house, no gravel driveway, no clearing, just cedar trees and mesquite brush. I pulled over and got out of the truck, walked up the embankment a bit. There wasn't even a gap in the trees, no sign that anything had ever been there. I checked my phone. The text was still there. There's a house where there wasn't one before. Jake had finally replied, hours later, just you good? I didn't respond. The next couple of days were uneventful, normal, even. I pushed the whole thing to the back of my head, told myself I'd been tired. Maybe I mistook a shadow or a cluster of trees for a structure. Maybe the music and the late night just made me loopy. But then Friday happened. Jake was gone that night, off with his girlfriend in Fredericksburg, so I had the place to myself. I decided to unwind with some beers and a movie, something light. I put on The Sandlot, actually, childhood comfort stuff. It was around 10:45 p.m. when the power cut out. Not a flicker, not a dim, just gone. TV, lights, fridge, everything. I sat there for a second, listening. Nothing outside, just the faint sound of cicadas and a breeze through the trees. I got up and grabbed the flashlight from the drawer by the sink, then went outside. The street was pitch black. No porch lights, no glow from any of the other houses. Total blackout, except, down the street, about 5 houses down, one house was lit. Not just lit, glowing. Every single window was illuminated with a dull yellow light, like the kind you see in old hotels with incandescent bulbs. Not LED, not normal. I just stared at it for a while. And then I swear, the light in the top right window started to flicker. Not like a bulb burning out, more like flickering on purpose. Like Morse code almost. It was slow, deliberate, on, off, on. But when I looked at the screen, the window was dark, completely dark. I watched it with my own eyes, flickering. But through my phone, nothing. That's when the porch light next to me popped back on. The rest of the house came to life again. AC kicked on. TV started back up. I looked back toward the glowing house. The lights were gone, dark like the rest. I didn't sleep much that night either. The next day, I drove to the house. Middle of the day, bright sunshine, just looked like a normal home. Beige siding, green trim, a flag in the yard. I even walked up and rang the bell. No answer. I stood there on the porch for a minute, just listening. I know this is going to sound weird, but the air felt thick, like something was holding its breath. I turned and left. I didn't go back, but something followed me. I started seeing people I didn't recognize. That sounds stupid, I know, but I mean it literally. People in places they shouldn't be. At H-E-B, I saw a man standing at the end of the cereal aisle, just staring at me, not shopping, not moving, just watching. He wore this dusty blue windbreaker and a baseball cap with no logo. I turned to look at some boxes of granola bars, and when I looked back, he was gone. At the feed store, a woman came in asking for fertilizer, but when I asked her what kind, she just stared at me and said, "The kind that grows where it shouldn't." That night, I found a note slipped under my windshield wiper. 8215 Borden Lane. Same address, the one from the red mailbox. But there is no Borden Lane, not here, not anywhere in Kerr County. I checked again. Google Maps, property records, zoning maps, nothing. And yet, that night, I found it. I don't remember driving there. That part is the worst. 1 minute I was on my couch, watching some dumb show on Netflix, and the next I was behind the wheel of my truck, engine idling, headlights on something grey and weathered, sitting 20 yards off the road, the house. I stepped out. The air was colder than it should have been. Not cool, cold, like February cold. The red mailbox was there, same number, 8215 Borden Lane. I walked up the path. Gravel crunched under my boots. The front door was open, just a crack. I don't remember pushing it. Inside, it smelled like cedar smoke and something else, something old. The walls were lined with wallpaper that peeled in places, revealing scorched wood beneath. The living room had no furniture, just a single rocking chair that creaked gently back and forth, even though there was no breeze. I turned to leave, but the door was gone. Not shut, gone. Just more wall, peeling wallpaper, a window with no glass. I stood there, breathing hard, trying to keep it together. That's when I heard it. Upstairs, footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming toward the top of the stairs. I ran. I didn't care where, I just needed to move. I ended up in what looked like a kitchen, except everything was wrong. The oven was built into the floor. The sink was on the ceiling. There were forks melted into the walls and scrawled in black ash across the fridge. There's a house where there wasn't one before. I closed my eyes and screamed, and when I opened them, I was back in my truck, parked outside my house. No memory of the drive. That was 5 days ago. I haven't left the house since. I keep all the doors locked, windows covered, but sometimes I still see them. People watching from across the street, faces in the window glass, things that look like people but aren't quite right. I don't sleep. I barely eat. I checked my phone this morning. The text I sent Jake, the one from the first night, it's gone. But now there's a new one. You went in, now it knows you. And outside, just down the road, there's a red mailbox, where there wasn't one before. I don't know what I'm hoping to accomplish by posting this here. Maybe I just need to get it out. Maybe someone's heard of something similar. I'm not expecting answers, but I'd take even a theory at this point. I live in Rock Springs, Texas, about as small and dry as it gets. I moved here from San Antonio last year, after I inherited a modest property from my uncle. It's this one-story ranch-style house just off the highway, with a wraparound porch and a huge open yard that backs into mesquite and brush. There's maybe one neighbor in visible range, old Mr. Dunlap, who's retired and spends most of his time smoking on his porch with a pair of binoculars he doesn't even try to hide. Otherwise, it's just wide open space. It's not the kind of place you'd expect to feel unsafe. Quiet nights, a sky full of stars, the occasional coyote howling in the distance. You'd think that'd be peaceful, and for a while it was. It started with something small, like it always does. This was June 28th. I remember because I had a dentist appointment earlier that day in Del Rio. The sun was brutal, 103 degrees, barely a breeze. I got home around 5:30 p.m., sweaty and irritated from the drive, and just wanted to lie down and let the AC do its thing. I kicked off my boots, poured a glass of tea, and turned on the ceiling fan in the living room. The place was dead quiet, just the hum of the air conditioner and some bugs buzzing around outside. It wasn't until around 7:45 p.m., when the sun was starting to drop, that I first noticed it. I was sitting out back on the porch, letting my dog Scout sniff around the yard before dark. He's a blue heeler mix, sharp as hell and usually on alert. That evening though, he was stiff, tail low, ears flicking, looking toward the far edge of the property line, where the patchy brush meets the fence. He let out this low growl, the kind he usually reserves for snakes or strange animals. I figured it might be a javelina or even a stray dog. I looked out across the yard but didn't see anything, just a shimmer in the air from the heat still rising off the ground. Then Scout backed up and barked, just once, loud and clipped. That got my attention. I walked to the edge of the porch, squinting into the dusk. I thought I saw movement, like something darting through the brush on the other side of the fence. But whatever it was didn't make much noise, and the fence was still intact. I didn't think much of it. Country life has its critters. That night, I went to bed around 11:30. Scout curled up at the foot of my bed, which wasn't unusual, but around 12:40 a.m., He sat up suddenly and let out a deep growl. I sat up too, now fully alert. That kind of growl doesn't happen without reason. Then I heard it. Knock, knock, 2 knocks. From the back door. It wasn't frantic, just 2 solid knocks, as if someone wanted to be heard, but not seen. I froze. No one knocks on your back door in Rock Springs. Not at 12:40 in the goddamn morning. I didn't move at first, just stared toward the hallway that led to the kitchen. The back door has a small window in it, textured glass, not clear, and the porch light had been off when I went to bed. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding in my chest, checked the cameras. I've got a decent setup, front porch, back porch, and one aimed toward the yard. Nothing super fancy, just the basic motion detecting setup I installed myself. When I pulled up the feed, I saw the infrared glow of the back porch cam. It was on, recording. My heart dropped when I saw the small figure standing at the door. It was a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, thin, short, wearing something white, like a t-shirt or nightgown. I couldn't tell. The kid wasn't moving, just standing there, facing the door. I couldn't see a face, just that small, still silhouette. Knock, knock, again, 2 knocks. My blood ran cold. I'm a single man, no kids. I don't know any children in the area, and there's no reason for a child to be at my back door in the middle of the night, with the gate still locked and no car anywhere near. I wanted to open the door and ask what was wrong. I really did, but something about it felt wrong, deeply wrong. Like if I opened that door, something would go very badly for me, so I didn't. I watched on the camera as the kids stood there for maybe another minute. Then they turned, slowly, and walked away, off the porch, into the darkness. Didn't run, just walked. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I checked the yard. The gate was still locked from the inside. No signs of it being climbed, and yet small footprints barefoot dotted the dust all over the back porch and yard. They were faint, but real. I took photos. Scout wouldn't even go near the door. I told myself maybe it was a sleepwalker, a neighbor's kid. Maybe they found a way in, then got spooked. But there aren't many houses nearby, and none of the neighbors have kids that young. I went into town later that day, asked around at the gas station and diner. Nobody knew anything. No missing kids, no pranksters, no strange visitors. I let it go. 3 nights passed without incident. Then July 2nd, it happened again. It was 2:12 a.m. when Scout started barking. Not growling this time, barking, loud and sharp. I jumped out of bed, heart already hammering, and I heard it. Knock, knock, 2 knocks, again from the back door. I didn't even go to the door. I went straight to the cameras. Same child, same size, standing in the exact same spot. This time their head was tilted slightly, like they were listening for something. No motion, no expression, just stillness. Then they turned and walked off the porch again, into the dark. I checked the yard the next morning. Same thing, bare footprints, small, child-sized. This time they were scattered, like the kid had been wandering the yard, but the gate was still locked. This time, I saved the camera footage, made copies, sent it to my friend Ron in San Antonio. He's tech-savvy and skeptical. Asked if he thought it could be some kind of glitch or prank. He watched it, then called me. "That's a real kid," he said. "But how the hell are they getting in? There's no opening, no light changes. It's like they just appear." I started losing sleep. Scout wouldn't sleep in the bedroom anymore. He paced the house all night, whining at the windows. I started keeping the porch lights on, locking every door and window twice. I even installed motion sensor floodlights and a secondary cam on the side of the house. Every night, I braced for the knocks, but they didn't come again, not for over a week. Then came July 10th. I stayed up late that night, too paranoid to sleep. It was about 1:50 a.m. when I noticed the side floodlight flicker on. Movement. I checked the cam feed, and for the first time, I saw it approaching, from the yard. The kid, the same one in the white shirt, was walking through the yard barefoot, arms at their sides. Their face was still unclear in the low resolution, but something about the way they moved, it wasn't right. Too steady, too quiet. They came straight to the back porch, climbed the steps, turned toward the door. I held my breath. Knock, knock. I shut off the feed. I didn't want to see more. I just sat there in the dark, frozen. Eventually, Scout stopped barking. The night went quiet again. When I checked the yard at sunrise, something new was there. A small object had been placed on the porch. It was a folded piece of paper, yellowed and slightly damp. No writing on the outside. I opened it, hands shaking. Inside, in shaky crayon letters, was one sentence. "Let me in. I won't knock again." I nearly threw up. I packed a bag that morning and left town. Drove to a friend's place in Junction and stayed 3 nights. Told him I had some plumbing issues. When I got back, everything was untouched. No signs of forced entry, but the air in the house felt wrong, like it had been disturbed. I checked the cameras. Nothing. No movement. The nights I was gone. But on July 15th, at exactly 12 a.m., every single camera feed glitched out for 2 minutes, just static. When it came back, the backyard was empty, but new prints had appeared on the porch, smaller this time, like from a toddler. I haven't had a full night's sleep since. The police don't care. I tried showing them the footage. They just chalked it up to a trespassing kid, told me to put up a taller fence. They didn't even look at the note, and now it's August 7th. It's been 3 weeks since the last knock, but tonight, about an hour ago, I found something new. Scout was barking at the back door again, low and constant. I turned on the porch light, hesitated, then opened the door just a crack. There was nothing there, but taped to the outside of the door, eye level, was a photo. It was a printed still frame from my own security camera, dated July 2nd, 2:12 a.m. The child, standing on the porch. Except in the photo, they're not facing the door. They're facing the camera, smiling. And that's where I'll leave this. I haven't told anyone else. I'm not sure what to do. I haven't slept in 2 nights, and Scout's been whining non-stop. I think the knocking might start again soon. I don't really talk about this with people. My wife Jenna doesn't like me bringing it up. Not because she doesn't believe me. She saw it too. That's the problem. We both saw it, and we can't explain it. And the not knowing is worse than anything. This happened in August of 2021. I remember because it was just after Jenna's birthday, and we had taken a road trip down to Texas to visit some old friends who'd moved to Petite, a tiny little town about 30 miles south of San Antonio. I'd never heard of it before they moved, and I probably never would have gone if they hadn't been there. If you've never been to that part of Texas in August, let me tell you, it's brutally hot. During the day, it sticks in the high 90s, and even after sunset, the humidity stays thick enough that your clothes feel wet. That whole area is kind of empty. There are stretches of nothing but low brush, dry roads, telephone poles, occasionally a gas station or a rundown house in the distance. It's like the sky just presses down on everything. Anyway, our friends Mike and Lara had just bought this property outside of Petite, not far from a pecan farm, a modest house with some acreage, surrounded by dirt roads and fields. They were going through their get out of the city phase and wanted to raise chickens, maybe start a garden. Jenna and I thought it'd be fun to visit, get away from the city noise, grill out, drink some beers under the stars, that sort of thing. The day we got there, it was late afternoon. The drive from Austin had taken longer than expected because of traffic on I-35. We got there around 5:30 p.m. It was still blazing hot. Mike had the grill going, and Lara had made sangria. The 4 of us just hung out in their backyard for hours. It wasn't until sometime after 10 p.m. that we decided to go for a walk. We'd all had a few drinks by then, but nothing heavy. It wasn't like we were stumbling drunk or anything. We just wanted to stretch our legs, get some air. They lived off this narrow 2-lane road that didn't see much traffic at night. No sidewalks, just a gravel shoulder, and the occasional wooden fence or mailbox. There were some sparse street lamps, those tall yellow sodium ones that hum quietly and throw weird uneven light. We walked up the road, past a few fields and a boarded-up barn. There were crickets chirping and frogs somewhere off in a ditch. You could see the moon just peeking over the tray line, almost full, very bright. Jenna had her phone out, using the flashlight occasionally when the road got too dark. Then, around 10:45, we saw her. At first it was just the beam of a bike headlight coming toward us, distant, bouncing slightly with the motion of the wheels. We assumed it was a kid riding home or something. The houses were spaced far apart, and people probably used bikes to get around. But as the light came closer, the air seemed to change. I don't know how else to say it. The cicadas got quieter. The frogs stopped croaking. Even the breeze felt like it just dropped. The girl on the bike was maybe 40 yards away when we really noticed her. She looked to be in her early teens, maybe 12 or 13. Long black hair, very pale skin, wearing a plain white dress or nightgown, kind of old-fashioned, like it wasn't something a modern kid would wear. No backpack, no helmet. Just riding this beat-up blue bike down the road, real slow, like she was coasting. She didn't look at us, she just kept riding, passing under one of the street lamps. That's when Jenna grabbed my arm and whispered, "Did you see that?" I'd seen it too, but I didn't know what to say. I looked at the others. Mike had stopped walking. Lara was looking back over her shoulder. There was no shadow. The bike had a front light, bright enough to cast a long shadow behind her. And the street lamp she passed under was strong enough to cast clear, sharp shadows from the telephone poles and mailboxes nearby. But the girl, her and her bike, had none. It was like the light didn't touch her, or rather, like she absorbed it. I turned and looked back down the road. expecting to see her continue past us. But she was gone. There hadn't been anywhere for her to go. No driveways, no turnoffs, no ditches she could have ducked into without us seeing or hearing it. She just wasn't there anymore. We stood there in silence for a few moments. Then Mike, trying to laugh it off, said, "Okay, that was creepy," but no one laughed. We turned around and walked back toward the house. Slower now, quieter. I kept glancing behind us every few steps. That night, I didn't sleep well. Jenna kept tossing, and once, around 3:30 a.m., she sat bolt upright and asked if I'd heard someone whisper. I hadn't. The AC was humming, and I assumed it was just the wind or maybe a raccoon outside. But her face was pale, and she didn't lie back down for an hour. The next morning, over coffee, we brought it up again. Mike was the first to speak. "You guys saw her shadow, right?" Jenna and I looked at each other. "No," I said. "That's the point. She didn't have one." Mike just stared at his mug for a while, then said, "Okay, good. I thought maybe I imagined it." Lara shook her head. "What kind of kid rides around at night like that? In the dark? In that dress?" That was a fair question. It had been humid, mosquito-heavy, and pitch black in some stretches of road. Who lets their daughter out riding around like that at almost 11 p.m.? Later that afternoon, while Mike and I were working on something in the garage, I asked if there were any kids in the area that matched her description. He said not that he knew of. They hadn't met many neighbors yet, but it was mostly older couples and farmhands, not many families with young kids. I almost let it go. We almost left it as a weird one-time event, but something about her just wouldn't leave my mind. Before we headed home the next day, I drove the stretch of road again. Jenna didn't want to come. She stayed back with Lara. I went around 6 p.m., broad daylight. I took slow turns, looked at every mailbox, every ditch. I found the street lamp she'd passed under. There were tire marks along the shoulder, not bike treads, but older pickup truck tires. And there was something else. Under the lamp, on the edge of the gravel, I found a single white shoelace. It was frayed and looked old, maybe weathered by the sun, but it was tied in a bow, like it had come loose recently. I bagged it, took it back to the house, and Jenna made me throw it away, said I was obsessing. She was right, in a way, but that's not the end. About 3 months later, in November, Mike called me late at night. He sounded shaken. She was back, he said. Apparently he'd been driving back from a feed store, taking the same road home. It was around 8 p.m., much earlier than when we'd seen her, and there she was again. Same bike, same dress, same hair, coasting silently along the edge of the road. Only this time, he was in his truck, headlights on high beam, and he swears she didn't cast a shadow in the lights either. He said it was like his headlights bent around her. He slowed down to look, maybe say something, but she didn't turn or react. She kept pedaling forward slowly, and then just veered off into a pecan grove. He stopped the truck, got out, and followed on foot. Nothing. No sound of wheels, no movement in the branches, no trace of her. He said he felt like someone was watching him the entire time. He asked me if I thought it was a ghost. I didn't know what to say. I've tried to research local legends, accidents, deaths, anything to make sense of it. I combed through news archives, message boards, obituaries. I found one possible link, but it's flimsy at best. In 1998, a 13-year-old girl named Erica Ramos was killed in a hit-and-run outside of Poteet. No bike was mentioned, just that she was walking along the road when a vehicle struck her and drove off. The driver was never found. She had long black hair and was wearing a white dress. That's all the article said, no photo. I tried to dig deeper, maybe find family, more records, but it was like she vanished from history. No social media, no memorials, nothing. Maybe it's not connected, but I can't stop thinking about it. The last time we visited Mike and Lara was this past spring. They're doing okay, still living there, but they don't walk at night anymore. Neither do Jenna and I. Every so often, I still dream about the road, about walking in the dark and hearing a quiet squeak of bicycle wheels behind me, and I always wake up before I can turn around. There's one last thing, something I haven't told anyone. About a week ago, here in Austin, I was driving home late, just after midnight. I was coming up Burnett Road near Allendale when I saw a flicker of light in my rearview mirror, a small flickering white beam bobbing up and down like a bicycle headlight. There were no cars behind me, no cyclists, nothing, just that bouncing light. I turned onto a side street and didn't look back. I don't know what she is, I don't know what she wants, but wherever she came from, I don't think she stayed in Poteet. I live in Wichita Falls, Texas. It's the kind of place where you hear the neighbor's dog bark every night, and you recognize every car that drives down your street. My wife Heather and I bought the house back in 2019. It's a modest one-story with yellow panel siding, a cracked concrete driveway, and a backyard that's just big enough to need mowing twice a week in the summer. Nothing special, just quiet, normal. We have one son, Mason. He just turned 6 in April. We'd been renting a duplex before this place, but once we found out Heather was pregnant, we got serious about settling somewhere more permanent. This house felt right, familiar, somehow. It's not perfect, old pipes, noisy AC, drafty windows, but it's ours. There's a shed in the backyard, came with the house, 8 by 10, old plywood construction, with a little slant roof and a rusted handle that sticks when it rains. The previous owner used it for gardening tools, I think. We use it for the same lawnmower, rakes, boxes of winter clothes. No power in there, no insulation, no reason to spend more than a few minutes inside unless you're desperate to get out of the sun. Anyway, nothing about the shed has ever stood out, until last week. It started Thursday night, July 31st. I remember the exact date because the temperature dropped after sundown, and that's rare for this time of year. I was outside around 10:30 p.m., walking the yard like I usually do after Mason's asleep. Heather was already in bed. I had a beer in one hand, my flashlight in the other. I don't know why I do it, some weird ritual I guess. I just like making sure everything's still where I left it, that the world hasn't quietly changed while I wasn't looking. That night it had. There was a window on the shed, a small one, maybe a foot wide by 2 feet tall, set high up on the side facing the house, the side I always see when I mow the lawn or water the garden. I stopped walking and stared at it for a long time. It was faintly lit from the inside, like a low amber glow, the kind you get from a nightlight or a candle behind glass. I thought maybe Heather had been out there and left a lantern or something. Maybe she finally cleaned up the boxes we'd been ignoring for 2 years. I walked closer, slow. The light didn't flicker or move. There were no shadows passing in front of it. I tapped my flashlight against my leg and stared, trying to remember if the window had always been there, but I couldn't. It just felt wrong. Not scary, not yet, just wrong. I didn't go in. I told myself it was nothing, turned around, finished my beer, went inside, locked the back door. The next morning I was making pancakes when Mason came running into the kitchen, his socks sliding on the linoleum. "Dad," he said, breathless. The girl in the shed waved at me. I stopped flipping and just stood there holding the spatula, heart thumping. "What girl?" "The one in the window." He pointed out the back door. "Last night. I saw her when I was getting water." "You saw her from inside the house?" He nodded. She smiled and waved. I waved back, but she disappeared. Heather looked up from her phone and frowned. "What's he talking about?" I told her, or tried to. I said there was a window in the shed now, and that it was lit last night. She gave me a look like I was joking. "There's no window on that shed, Josh. I've been out there a dozen times." I didn't argue. I just handed her the spatula and said I'd be right back. I walked out barefoot, over the wet grass, still in my t-shirt and pajama pants. The sun was barely up, casting everything in gold and orange. Birds chirped. Someone's sprinklers hissed nearby. When I turned the corner of the shed, the window was gone. There was nothing but the same blank plywood panel that had always been there. Faded paint, a nail sticking out. No seams, no frame, nothing. I stood there for at least 5 minutes, heart sinking. Heather came out eventually, arms crossed. "Josh, what are you doing?" I didn't say anything. I just stared at the wall. I didn't sleep well that night. My mind wouldn't stop chewing on it. I kept picturing the glow of the window, the way it didn't flicker like candlelight should. And Mason, he had no reason to lie. He couldn't have made that up. He'd never even been in the shed. The next night, I went back out at 10, earlier this time. It was 84 degrees, humid, quiet. I walked the perimeter of the yard, pretending not to care. When I got to the shed, I shined my flashlight on the same side. Nothing. But when I circled around the back, the side that faces the neighbor's fence, there it was. The window, on a different wall now. Same size, same amber glow, same faint warmth radiating from the glass. I stood dead still for a long time, then took a step closer, then another. The glass was dirty, like it hadn't been cleaned in decades, but I could still make out the faint shapes inside. Shelves, old tools, a rolled-up sleeping bag in the corner, and something else. At first I thought it was a doll, a pale shape, sitting against the far wall with its knees pulled up to its chest. But it moved, shifted slightly, just enough to prove it wasn't made of plastic. It was a girl, thin, long-haired, maybe 11 or 12. She had her face buried in her arms. She didn't notice me. I didn't know what to do. My first instinct was to run inside, grab Heather, call the cops, but something about the whole thing felt off, like I wasn't supposed to look too long, like noticing her was a mistake. I backed away, went inside, locked the doors, didn't say a word to anyone. The next morning, I lied to Mason and said the shed was full of hornets and he wasn't allowed near it. He pouted, but didn't argue. I spent the whole day thinking about what I'd seen. Every possible explanation ran through my head: squatters, pranksters, hallucinations, carbon monoxide, but nothing fit. The shed didn't have power or ventilation or anywhere to hide. I knew every square inch of it, or at least I thought I did. That night, I didn't go outside. I couldn't. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was still in there, if she was real, if she'd seen me. Then, around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps on the deck outside our bedroom window. Just 2 soft steps, then nothing. I didn't sleep at all after that. By Saturday morning, Heather noticed something was off. She asked if I was having another episode. I've struggled with anxiety in the past, especially after my dad died, so she assumed it was stress. I didn't correct her, let her think I was unraveling. It felt safer that way. That night, I caved and went back out. The sky was cloudy. The streetlights looked fuzzy through the humidity. I walked slowly, flashlight off. I didn't want her to know I was coming. The shed was dark, no window. I circled it. Once, twice, nothing. But when I turned to go back inside, I heard something from within the shed. A soft scraping sound, like fingernails on wood. I froze. Then I heard whispering. Not words, exactly, just the idea of words. A faint rhythm, a girl's voice, low and distant, like she was talking in her sleep. I didn't stay to listen. I bolted for the house and slammed the door behind me. Mason was still up watching cartoons. I sat next to him on the couch, not saying a word. That night, I locked the shed, just for good measure. Padlock, chain, the works. The next morning, I found the lock lying in the grass, bent open like a paperclip. The door was ajar. I didn't go inside. I just stood there staring at it. Later that day, Mason drew something with crayons. A girl with long black hair, sitting in a window. He gave it to me and said, "She told me her name is Lila." I stared at him, trying to keep my voice steady. "When did she tell you that?" "Last night, when she knocked on my window." His bedroom faces the backyard. That night, I sat in the dark with a kitchen knife and watched his window from the hallway. Nothing happened. But at 3:12 a.m., I heard the whispering again, this time from inside the house. I got up slowly, heart pounding, followed the sound to the back door. It was unlocked, even though I know I locked it. The shed light was on again. I could see the glow through the window. It was back on the original wall now. The girl was standing in it, pressed against the glass, smiling. She waved, and I swear to God, her other hand was holding something that looked exactly like Mason's stuffed bear. I called the police the next morning. They searched the shed top to bottom, found nothing. No girl, no sleeping bag, no window. They told me I might want to talk to someone, and offered to put me in touch with a counselor. I didn't bother explaining, just nodded and let them leave. The next night, I didn't go outside. I stayed in Mason's room and slept on the floor. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard the back gate creak open, then soft footsteps on the grass, then a knock on the window. 3 taps. Mason didn't wake up. I stayed frozen on the carpet, watching the shadow outside shift and move. I didn't dare look directly at it. I just waited until sunrise. And this morning, today when I went out to check the shed, there were 2 windows, one on the original wall and one on the back, facing the fence, both glowing softly from within. I haven't gone in. I won't. Mason's at my sister's house now, 2 towns over. I told Heather I needed time to myself. She thinks I'm having a breakdown. Maybe I am, but I swear to you, as I write this from my kitchen table, it's 11:41 p.m., August 7th. I can see both windows glowing through the backyard, and there's someone new in the second one. Not a girl this time, a man. He's taller, thinner, face pressed right to the glass, just watching me. I shut the blinds. I don't know how long this has been going on, or what I did to bring it here, or if it was ever about me at all. But if you live near Wichita Falls, don't go near the shed. And if your kid says someone waved at them through a window that wasn't there before, believe them. I want to start by saying I've never been superstitious. I grew up in Austin, Texas. Pretty normal childhood. 2 working parents, a younger sister, a dog named Tater who died when I was 15. I've always been more of a logic and reason guy. If the power went out, it was the breaker. If I heard a noise at night, it was the pipes or the wind or the fridge settling. I never really believed in anything paranormal, even after what happened. I've tried to explain it to myself in 100 different ways. I've talked to a therapist. I've combed through message boards. Even emailed a guy who studies animal cognition at UT. Nothing. This happened 2 years ago, June 11th, 2023. I only remember the exact date because it was my daughter's birthday. She had just turned 6. My wife and I had taken her out to my brother-in-law's ranch near San Angelo for a family barbecue. They have a big property, goats, chickens, an old smoker that sounds like it's going to explode every time it starts up. It was one of those perfect hot Texas days, 97 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, dust sticking to your legs and the sound of bugs everywhere. Our daughter Gracie spent the whole afternoon chasing my niece around with a Nerf gun while the adults drank Modelo and talked about how expensive gas was getting. We left around 6:30 p.m. The sun was still up and the drive back was uneventful. 3 hours give or take. My wife dozed off. Gracie was out cold in the back seat, clutching her new stuffed llama. We pulled into our driveway a little after 9:30. We live in a one-story house in a quiet neighborhood in Driftwood. Oak trees, gravel driveways, lots of space between homes. The kind of place where you can leave your door unlocked without worrying. We had a dog once, Luna, a chocolate lab we adopted in 2016. But she passed away the year before from a heart condition. We hadn't gotten another one yet. The house felt a little emptier without her, but we figured we'd wait until Gracie was older. That night, everything felt normal until we stepped inside. The front door was unlocked. Now I'll admit, I've forgotten to lock up before, we all have. But that day I was sure I'd locked it. We had one of those keypad deadbolts, and I remember hearing the little beep when I punched it in before we left. I even joked about it with my wife. I said, house is locked, meat is smoked, life is good. But when I turned the knob that night, it just opened, no resistance. I felt that weird tight feeling in my chest, like the air was too thick. I glanced at my wife, who was holding Gracie's backpack. She looked confused, too. You sure you locked it? She asked. Yeah, I said, pretty sure. We stepped inside slowly. It smelled off, like old dirt and something else. Something faintly metallic. Not strong enough to be blood or anything, just strange. I did a quick sweep of the house while my wife stayed in the living room with Gracie. All the windows were closed, nothing was broken. No drawers rifled through, no lights on, everything was where we left it. The only weird thing was the back door. It was shut, but the lock was turned to unlocked. I know I locked that one too. I checked every room, bathroom, closets, even under the beds, and didn't find anything. I started to feel silly. Maybe I had forgotten to lock the door. Maybe I was just tired and paranoid. We unpacked, put Gracie to bed, and by 11, we were winding down. That's when we heard it, scratching, not loud, subtle but steady, like claws on wood. It was coming from the kitchen. We both froze. It was the kind of sound that your brain doesn't register right away. We don't have rats, and it didn't sound like a mouse. It was deliberate, almost rhythmic. I got up, heart pounding, and walked to the kitchen, flicking the light on. Nothing. Then I turned around and I saw it. There was a dog sitting at the end of the hallway, just sitting there, perfectly still. It wasn't there 10 seconds ago. I would have seen it. The hallway leads straight from the kitchen to the front door. I just walked through it. The dog was medium-sized, probably 50 pounds, short black fur, white chest. Looked like a mix between a terrier and maybe a lab. No collar, no tags. It didn't bark, it didn't move. It just stared at me. I said, "Hey there, buddy," my voice cracking a little. The dog tilted its head, like it was listening. Its mouth was closed, no panting, no tongue out, just that intense stare. I knelt down slowly and extended my hand, trying to show it I wasn't a threat. It didn't react. My wife came around the corner and gasped. "Where did it come from?" she asked. I don't know, I didn't see it come in." Gracie's bedroom door creaked open then, and she poked her head out, rubbing her eyes. "Mummy," she said sleepily, "why is the dog back?" My heart dropped. "What do you mean, sweetie?" my wife asked. "The dog from earlier, he was in my room before we left." We both looked at each other. "Gracie," I said slowly, "there wasn't a dog in the house this morning." She frowned, then nodded like she was correcting herself. "No, not this morning. He was in my closet, while you were loading the car." I didn't know what to say. We brought Gracie into our room for the night, and I tried calling animal control, but it was after hours. The recording said to call 311 in the morning. I ended up setting up a makeshift bed for the dog in the laundry room, with a blanket and some water. It walked in on its own, no resistance, still completely silent. It didn't act aggressive or scared, just aware. That's the best word I can use, like it knew something I didn't. Before I shut the door, it looked up at me. Its eyes didn't look right. You ever look at a dog's eyes and they're kind of dopey, warm, or excited? This wasn't that. These eyes were still, too still. There was no light bouncing off them, no life, just dark brown, staring into me. Not like a dog watching a person, like a person watching a person. I shut the door and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, trying to process what the hell was happening. My wife was already lying down, curled around Gracie. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard the laundry room door creak. I know I shut it. I know I did, but it was open, and the dog was gone. I searched the whole house. Again, nothing. No dog, no scratches, no hair, just that faint metallic smell lingering in the air, a little stronger now. I barely slept. In the morning, I called animal control. The guy on the line told me to call if it came back. That was it. No advice, no explanation. He said, sometimes dogs wander in through back doors, especially if it's hot out. You'd be surprised. Yeah, except this one didn't wander. It appeared. That whole day I felt off. You ever have that sensation where something is behind you, like someone's watching you even though you're alone? That was me, constantly glancing over my shoulder. Every time I turned a corner in the house, I expected to see it. That night, around 11 p.m., we were watching TV when I heard the front door handle click, not rattle, click, like it was being turned, gently. I jumped up and ran to the door. Nothing there. The porch light showed the empty steps, the dead grass, the edge of the gravel road. But when I turned back, the dog was inside, sitting on the rug. No sound, no warning. My wife screamed. Gracie started crying. The dog just sat there. I grabbed a broom, the only thing I could think of, and tried to shoo it out, but it didn't budge. I tried pushing it gently, then harder. Nothing. It was like pushing a statue. It didn't even growl. I opened the door wide and said, "Go. Get out. Go." Finally, it stood up, walked calmly outside, and sat at the end of our driveway. Just sat there, watching. We locked every door, blocked the doggy door we hadn't used in years, checked every window. I wanted to call the cops, but what was I going to say? A dog keeps appearing in my house and staring at us with human eyes. They'd laugh me off the line. That night, we all slept in the master bedroom with the door locked. I left the hallway light on. Around 4 a.m., I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not snoring, not rustling. Breathing, slow, deep, like someone standing right outside the door. I didn't move. I just lay there, heart thudding so loud I thought it would wake my wife. After a few minutes, the breathing stopped. Then came the sound of claws on wood, scratching, that same rhythmic pattern. I sat up slowly and reached for my phone, but the screen stayed black, dead. It had been on 80% before bed. I checked the outlet, still plugged in. The scratching moved, circling the bedroom, one side, then the other. Then it stopped, and then I heard it, a whisper, right at the base of the door. Let me in. Not a growl, not a bark, words. I couldn't breathe. My wife stirred and asked, "Did you hear that?" I whispered, "Don't move." The rest of the night passed in silence. In the morning, everything was normal. The house was quiet. No signs of the dog, no scratches on the floor. Our phones were working again. The sun was shining through the window like nothing had happened. We packed a bag and went to my parents' place in Austin, told them we were visiting for the week. We never really explained why. A few days later, I went back alone to grab some clothes and check on the house. The air inside felt heavy, not hot, heavy. I walked into the living room. The dog was on the couch. I swear to God, it smiled. Not like a panting dog, not like it was happy. It curled its lips back, teeth bared. But the eyes were the same, still, too still, like glass marbles sunk into flesh. And then, it spoke. It said, "You let me in." Its mouth moved. The jaw didn't match the words perfectly, like it hadn't quite figured out how to use it. The voice was flat, no inflection, just those words. "You let me in." I backed out of the house, keys in hand, and slammed the door. Didn't even lock it. Drove off so fast I left the gate open. We sold the house 3 months later. We never went back. Never talked about it again in front of Gracie. She doesn't seem to remember much. Sometimes she talks about her closet dog, but we changed the subject. We moved to Colorado last year. New house, no dogs, no strange smells. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear scratching at the back door. And when I check, there's nothing there, just the sound of breathing. I wasn't going to post this. I told myself it was nothing, just a fluke, or maybe some elaborate prank I fell for without realizing it. But it's been 6 months now, and I still can't explain what happened that night, or why I still hear that voice, even when the radio is off. I was driving back from a wedding in Denton, Texas. It was Saturday, March 9th. I remember the date because the wedding had originally been scheduled for the week before, but a late-season cold front dropped a surprise ice storm across North Texas, and everything got pushed back. I hadn't seen the bride, Ashley, in a few years. We were college friends, not super close, but I still felt honored to be invited. Anyway, the wedding was beautiful, but it ran long. The reception didn't wrap up until after 11, and I was staying in Decatur, about 45 minutes away if you take Highway 380 west. The drive wasn't a big deal. I'd made it before, and the road was wide open at that hour, just a few trucks and late-night traffic. The weather that night was still cold for March, around 39 degrees, maybe lower out on the highway. The wind had picked up, blowing hard from the north, which made the empty fields look like they were rippling in slow motion under the moonlight. My rental car, a silver Nissan Altima, had Bluetooth, but my phone was almost dead, and I didn't have a charger, so I ended up scanning the FM radio to keep myself entertained on the drive. Most of the stations faded into static once I got about 15 minutes outside of Denton. That's pretty normal out there. Lots of open land, no real towns between the two cities, just gas stations and those little white churches you see in the middle of nowhere. Somewhere past Crum, I stumbled across a station that caught my ear. 98.6 FM. At first I thought it was a music station. I could hear something, a soft ambient track, almost like background noise in a movie. It was distant though, like it wasn't broadcasting properly. I turned the volume up a bit, curious. It wasn't music, not exactly. It sounded like breathing. Slow, shallow, labored breathing, right up against a microphone. I know how that sounds, but I swear that's what it was. No words, no music, just breathing, like someone lying on their back, maybe in pain. The static would come and go, making it hard to hear clearly. I thought it might be a medical drama or some experimental art thing. You never know what kind of weird late-night programming stations run. But I kept listening. About 5 minutes later, the breathing faded, replaced by what I can only describe as crying. Soft at first, but real, like a woman sobbing quietly to herself. It wasn't exaggerated or fake, not like those corny horror podcasts. This sounded raw, desperate, the kind of crying that makes you uncomfortable to hear. I started feeling weird. The road was completely empty. No headlights in either direction. No towns for miles. Just the soft thud of tires on pavement and the wind buffeting the car. I thought about turning the radio off, but something kept me listening. I guess I wanted to know what it was. Maybe it was part of a late-night art broadcast. Maybe I was overthinking it. That's what I told myself. Then the crying stopped. Dead air for maybe 20 seconds. Then static. Then a voice. It was a whisper at first, hard to catch, like someone whispering behind a door, where you can't quite make out the words. But it got louder, clearer. Male, I think, though the tone was off. I still remember what it said. Can you hear me? I stared at the radio. I hadn't touched the dial. I wasn't even sure I was still on the same frequency. I've been trying to reach you. My hands tightened on the wheel. I don't know why it scared me so much. Maybe because the voice didn't sound like it was part of a show. It sounded live, like someone whispering directly into the mic, speaking in real time. The voice paused, like it was waiting for a response. Then it said, "You're not supposed to be out here." I switched the radio off. I know, it sounds made up, but I swear to God, the second I killed the power, my headlights flickered, just for a split second. Not off completely, but enough to notice. The road ahead went dark, then lit up again, like nothing happened. My stomach dropped. I didn't even realize I'd taken my foot off the gas until I looked down and saw I was coasting at 40 mph. I sped up. For the next 10 minutes, I kept glancing at the dash, the mirrors, the roadside. Everything felt wrong, like I wasn't alone, even though there were no other cars for miles. I turned on my phone even though the battery was under 3%, just to have something, no signal, just a searching message where the bars should be. I kept going. I was maybe 20 minutes from Decatur when I saw something on the side of the road. It looked like a figure, someone standing near the shoulder, facing away from the highway. Pale clothes, no movement. My first thought was that it was a hitchhiker, or someone whose car had broken down. But as I passed, my headlights lit them up for a brief second. They weren't wearing pale clothes. Their skin was pale, like grey-white. They had no jacket, no bag, nothing. Just standing there, completely still, arms at their sides, like they were waiting for something. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. But when I checked my rearview mirror, they were gone. I mean gone. The highway was straight for at least a quarter mile behind me. Flat land, no trees, no ditches deep enough to hide in. I scanned the shoulder, trying to figure out where they went, but there was nothing there. Then the radio turned back on. I didn't touch anything. My hand was on the steering wheel, but the screen lit up on its own, back to 98.6 FM. Just static. Then the voice again. You saw me. I slammed my hand down on the power button. This time, the whole console flickered. Radio, AC, display. Everything blinked off and then came back a second later, like the car itself glitched. And I swear to God the screen flashed something, just for a fraction of a second, right before it cut back to normal. A word. My name. Evan. It was gone before I could process it. I pulled over. I was shaking. My hands, my legs, even my jaw. It was like I'd come down with something. I sat there for a minute on the shoulder, engine running, trying to catch my breath. I looked behind me. Nothing. Empty road. Empty fields. I turned the car back on. Not the radio, just the engine, and made it the rest of the way to Decatur without stopping. I checked into the motel around 12:20 a.m. and I didn't sleep, not a second. The next morning, I told myself it was a dream, a stress hallucination. I drove back to Denton in the daylight, along the same route. Nothing weird, no figure on the road, no strange voices. And when I tried 98.6 FM again, there was nothing, just empty static. I've searched online, a lot. I've gone through Reddit, YouTube, weird audio forums. Nobody seems to know anything about a broadcast like that. Some people talk about numbers stations or pirate radio signals. But this didn't feel like that. It felt personal. And here's the part I haven't told anyone. 2 weeks after that night, I was home in Austin. I hadn't thought about the radio thing much. I chalked it up to nerves, or maybe something I imagined during a long, cold drive. But then I woke up around 3 a.m. to a sound. Not loud, not jarring, just soft static, coming from the kitchen. I walked out, half asleep, heart already pounding. I don't own a radio, not even a clock radio, but I do have a Bluetooth speaker I sometimes use with my phone. It was on, glowing blue, connected to something. The static was coming through it, low volume, but unmistakable, and behind the static, faintly, like it was buried under white noise, I could hear that same voice, whispering. I unplugged the speaker and threw it in the trash the next morning. Since then I've moved, twice. I've replaced my car. I don't use Bluetooth anymore, not even for calls, but sometimes, not often, just enough to keep me uneasy. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and swear I hear static, faintly, from the other room, or worse, breathing. I don't know what I picked up on that road. I don't know if 98.6 FM is a real station, or something else entirely. I've driven the Denton-Decatur route twice since, both times during the day. I never found the spot where I saw that figure. I'm not even sure that stretch of road exists the way I remember it. But if you ever find yourself out on Highway 380 after midnight, maybe your phone's dead, maybe you're just bored and you decide to scan the radio for something to listen to, don't stop at 98.6. If you hear breathing or crying or your own name whispered through the static, keep driving, because whatever it is on the other end of that signal, it's listening too. I wasn't going to tell anyone this, not because I'm scared they won't believe me, but because deep down, I don't want to believe it myself. But I keep hearing them. Not every night, just when it's quiet enough, and the wind shifts right, like it did that summer. It was the middle of July 2023, and Texas was suffocating under a brutal drought. I live in Fort Worth, but I'd taken some time off from my job and decided to go camping out near Glen Rose for a few days. Just me and my old college friend Mark. He's one of those guys who can identify a bird by its call and knows how to tie a dozen knots. I figured I could use the break from the city and from my brain constantly spinning its tires. I was burned out, 2 years into a job I hated, an apartment with no AC, and a relationship that had quietly eroded over the past 6 months. I needed a reset. We set up camp at a small site near Wheeler Branch Reservoir, about 10 minutes outside Glen Rose. It was Wednesday, July 12. I remember because the thermometer in Mark's truck read 107 when we parked, and I muttered, "We're gonna die out here." The drought had turned everything brown, grass was brittle, trees were shedding early, and what should have been a shallow creek next to our site was bone dry. Not even a puddle, just cracked earth and stones where water used to run. Mark pointed out some fossilized shells embedded in the creek bed wall, and we joked that maybe we'd dig up a dinosaur. That first night was uneventful, besides the usual tossing and turning in a too-hot tent. Around 3 a.m., I stepped out to pee and noticed how quiet it was. Not just normal night quiet, dead quiet. No crickets, no wind, no rustling in the trees, just the sound of my own breathing and the crunch of my shoes on dry grass. When I looked down into the creek bed, I thought I saw something move, just a shadow at the edge, ducking behind a rock. I figured it was a raccoon or armadillo, but I didn't hear anything after that, and I told myself I was overtired. Heat makes you see things, you know? The next day, we hiked out to see Dinosaur Valley State Park, and by the time we got back, we were too beat to do much more than eat and pass out. Mark fell asleep fast, snoring like a chainsaw. I lay awake a while, scrolling through my phone until the battery died. It was past midnight when I started to hear it. At first, I thought it was just the wind coming up after a still day. Then it shifted. It sounded like laughing, not like a full belly laugh, more like kids giggling, soft, high-pitched, and distant, coming from the dry creek bed. I froze. You know how you can tell when something's not right, even before your brain catches up? That's how it felt. I lay there, holding my breath, trying to convince myself it was coyotes maybe, or kids in another campsite, except there weren't any other campsites for at least a half mile, and we hadn't seen a single soul all day. I reached over and nudged Mark. He groaned and rolled over. "Hey, you hear that?" He didn't answer, just kept snoring. I sat up and unzipped the tent flap, just enough to peek out. The moon was high, full and pale, casting everything in silver light. I didn't see anyone, but the giggling came again, a little louder this time, and I swear to God it sounded like 3 or 4 kids, laughing at something only they could see. And then it stopped, like someone hit mute. The silence was heavier than before. I crawled back into my sleeping bag and tried to sleep, telling myself it didn't matter, probably just owls or foxes. The mind plays tricks. The next morning, I didn't mention it. Mark wouldn't have taken it seriously. We spent the day swimming in the reservoir and checking out a couple abandoned barns we found off the main road. Around dusk, we came back to the site and noticed something weird. There were footprints in the dry creek bed, bare feet, small ones, like a child's, and not just one set, 3 or 4, all leading in different directions, circling the area below our site. Mark thought maybe they were old, from before the drought, but the edges were sharp, no dust had settled in them, and they hadn't been there the day before. That night, I didn't sleep, not really. I lay in my bag, eyes open, waiting. Around 2:30, the giggling started again, this time closer, directly beneath the tent. I held my breath, and then I don't know why I did it. I laughed, just a little, a nervous, breathy chuckle, like when you see a horror movie jump scare and try to play it off. The giggling stopped, and then I heard a voice, clear, right outside the tent flap. "Do you want to play?" My blood turned to ice. It was high-pitched, sweet, almost sing-song, but wrong. Wrong in a way I can't explain. Too steady, too rehearsed. Mark sat up, finally awake. "What the hell was that?" "Shh," I whispered. "Don't say anything." We sat there in silence for a long time, listening. Nothing. Then from further down the creek bed, more laughter. Louder this time. Unmistakably children, running and giggling, but something was off. The rhythm. It didn't sound joyful. It sounded repetitive, like they were laughing because they were supposed to. Like an echo of laughter, not the real thing. We stayed awake until dawn. The next morning we packed up. Mark didn't want to admit it, but he looked freaked out. He kept glancing at the creek bed while we loaded the truck. Before we left, I walked down there one last time. The footprints were gone, wiped clean, but someone had drawn a smiley face in the dirt with a finger, 2 dots and a curved line. Nothing else. On the drive back, Mark broke the silence. "You think some local kids are screwing with campers?" I didn't answer. We didn't talk again until we got to my apartment. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the voice, that sing-song tone. "Do you want to play?" I tried to convince myself it was just some rural kids messing around, looking for reactions. TikTok challenge maybe, but deep down I knew. The voice wasn't human. It's been over a year. I moved cities, got a new job. I haven't talked to Mark since October, But 3 nights ago, I was lying in bed around 2 a.m., scrolling my phone in the dark. The apartment was quiet. No traffic, no neighbors, just the hum of the fridge. And then, I swear on everything, I heard it again. Faint, distant, from outside. Laughter, small, childlike giggling. And then, just before it stopped, "Do you want to play? I live on the 3rd floor." I've never posted here before. Honestly, I never thought I would. I used to read stories on this sub at night, especially when I worked graveyard shifts, just to keep myself awake. I always thought the posts were creepy, but fiction, or at least exaggerated. But I've been dealing with something that I don't know how to explain. And even though I left that job almost a year ago, I still wake up at 3:14 a.m. almost every night. It doesn't matter what time I go to sleep, or if I take something to knock myself out. My body just knows. I worked at a gas station in Marfa, Texas, one of those 24-hour ones off Highway 90. If you've ever been to Marfa, you know it's a weird place. Quiet, artsy, full of tourists during the day, and absolutely dead at night. There's also the whole Marfa lights thing that people talk about. Strange floating lights out in the desert that no one's really explained. Locals don't take it seriously, but tourists come out with tripods and telescopes like they're expecting a UFO to land. Anyway, I got the night shift because I didn't have any other options. I dropped out of school after a car accident left me with a permanent limp and a stack of medical debt. I was living with my cousin in a single-wide trailer just outside town, and she had connections to the manager at the station. So every night from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I was there, stocking shelves, manning the register, restocking the cooler. Sometimes people came in, most times they didn't. I'd been there about 6 months when the thing happened. It was early October, the night of the 8th. I only remember the exact date because it was the first night the weather actually felt cold. You don't get that in Texas often, but it had dropped to the low 40s, and the wind had this sharpness to it like it was cutting straight through your jacket. The lot was empty, the highways were quiet. It was just me, under the buzzing fluorescent lights, flipping through a paperback behind the counter. Around 2:50 a.m., I heard this faint thump, like someone dropped something heavy on the roof. Not loud, but enough to snap me out of my daze. At first, I figured it might be the wind. It gets strong out here, or maybe a bird. But then I heard it again, thump, then a dragging sound, like something was being scraped across the roof. I remember glancing up at the ceiling tiles, like I expected to see dust fall or something. Of course, nothing happened, so I got up and stepped outside to check. The night was completely still. The wind I'd heard earlier had died down. No cars, no people. The sky was cloudy, which made the place feel even darker, even with the floodlights. I looked around for anything, a branch, maybe a piece of metal that came loose, but everything looked normal, until I looked up. There was a man on the roof, just standing there, barefoot. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and his jeans looked wet or dirty. I couldn't tell in the light. But what I remember very clearly was how pale his skin looked, like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. He was facing away from me at first, but then he turned and smiled. I don't mean a normal smile. I mean something was wrong with it, too wide, like he was trying to show all of his teeth. And he was looking straight at me, but also, not quite. His eyes didn't track right, like he wasn't seeing me, just the space I was in. I didn't say anything. I just went back inside and locked the door. My first thought was drugs, meth, something. We'd get strung out people through town sometimes. And if he was tweaking, maybe he'd climbed up there somehow. But I didn't hear a ladder, and there's no way to get onto the roof without help. No fire escapes, no dumpsters near the wall, just flat stucco and a smooth metal overhang. I called the police. While I waited, I checked the monitors. We had 2 cameras that showed the lot, and one that looked out back, but nothing pointed to the roof directly. Still, I figured maybe I'd see how he got up. But when I rewound the tape, nothing. I scrolled back 5 minutes, 10, nothing. No one entered the lot, no one climbed the wall, no one came into frame at all. Except, he was there now, on the live feed, pacing, back and forth, just along the edge of the roof, where the awning curved out. The camera angle was bad, but I could see his legs moving, this weird stiff shuffle, and he'd stop every so often and lean forward, like he was trying to look through the ceiling. He'd tilt his head in these slow, unnatural angles, like an animal sniffing something it can't quite place. That's when I realized he was moving directly over me, matching my position inside, 1-to-1. At exactly 3:14 a.m., he stopped, looked straight down, like he knew where the cameras were, where I was, And then I swear on my life, he tapped his foot 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. The glass door rattled like something hit it hard. I jumped, but no one was there. Nothing on the lot. When I looked back at the monitor, the man on the roof was gone. The cops showed up 5 minutes later. They searched the area, even climbed up onto the roof with a ladder. Nothing. No footprints, no debris, no sign anyone had been there at all. I showed them the footage, but the roof area was mostly shadow. One of them, Officer McAllen I think, said it was probably a raccoon or something, and that I imagined the rest. When I pushed him about the barefoot man and the smile, he just gave me that look, the "you've been working too many night shifts" look. They left. I didn't sleep that day. The next night, I came in early, around 9:30, just to check things in daylight. Still nothing. But when I opened the storage closet to grab a mop, I noticed something wedged under the shelves. A piece of paper, folded into a tight triangle. Old, water damaged. I don't know how I hadn't seen it before. When I opened it, all it said was, "He knows where you are now." No signature, no context. I showed it to my manager the next day, but he just shrugged. Probably a prank. Maybe someone slipped it in weeks ago, and I only noticed now. But that didn't explain the man, or what happened after, because it didn't stop. Over the next few nights, I started hearing things. Sometimes it was just movement on the roof again, scuttling, dragging, pacing, always between 2:45 and 3:15. Sometimes it was whispers through the ventilation system. Once, the lights in the cooler flickered, and I swore I saw a reflection behind me that didn't match mine. But what really messed me up happened about a week later. Same shift. I was refilling the coffee pots when the power cut out. Not a brownout, just dead. Silence. Total darkness, except for the emergency light by the door. I froze. My phone said it was 3:14 a.m. Then, from the roof, bang. Loud, sharp, like someone stomping hard, then dragging. Then that same tapping rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. And then, from behind me, a voice, so close I could feel the breath on my ear. "You left the door open." I turned around, ready to swing, but no one was there. Nothing. Just silence. And then the power came back on. The front door was still locked, but the storage room, wide open. I quit 2 days later. I told my manager I was sick, needed time off. He didn't press. I think he saw the state I was in. Bags under my eyes, hands shaking, constantly looking over my shoulder. I haven't worked a night shift since. But here's the part that still gets me. About 3 weeks after I quit, I was scrolling through Reddit and saw a thread on r/paranormal about weird stuff in small towns. Someone mentioned the Marfa lights, and I clicked out of curiosity. Down in the comments, someone wrote, "My cousin worked a gas station in Marfa back in the 90s, quit after she saw a guy on the roof staring at her. No ladder, no way up, just barefoot and smiling." I DM'd the commenter. They didn't reply. That gas station is still there. I drove by last month just to see if I could handle being near it. From the lot, everything looked normal. New staff, bright paint, but I swear, when I glanced at the roof just for a second, I thought I saw someone there. Just a flicker of movement, a shadow shifting, watching me. I don't work nights anymore. I live in Austin now, but every so often, when I lie awake in bed, I still hear it. Tap, tap, and at exactly 3:14 a.m. I wake up. Every time. This happened last summer, and even now, I'm not sure how to talk about it. I've told maybe 2 people, and both of them reacted the same way. That polite pause, that small forced laugh like they were waiting for the punchline, but there isn't one. And I'm not telling this to scare anyone. I'm telling it because I don't know what else to do with it. It's just sitting in me. This happened near Brownwood, Texas, where my uncle owns a small cattle ranch just outside of town. I'd gone out there to help him after he had a minor stroke in June. Nothing too serious, but enough to keep him off his feet for a few weeks. I was 26 at the time, between jobs, and it seemed like a good way to kill time and do something useful. I grew up in Houston, but spent a lot of summers in Brownwood as a kid, so it wasn't unfamiliar. My uncle's property sits at the bottom of a shallow valley, one of those places where everything feels wider than it should. His land borders an old, unused field that's been fallow for years. I think it used to be part of a cotton farm, but no one's touched it in decades. Everyone around there just calls it the North Field. even though it's actually southwest of the main house. It's the kind of place you don't think about unless you have to. Dry, flat, ringed by barbed wire and some scattered mesquites. No paths, no markers, just knee-high grass stretching out to the tree line. The first time I noticed something strange about it was maybe 2 weeks after I arrived. It was July 14th. I only remember because my uncle's neighbor, Royce, had dropped off some fireworks left over from the 4th. We lit a few off behind the barn after dinner. It was muggy, around 9 p.m., and I remember the air felt heavy, like the heat wasn't done with the day yet. Texas heat does that. It clings. I was heading back toward the house when I looked over at the field. The wind had picked up, not strong, just enough to rustle the grass, but it was blowing in one direction, straight north, not northish, not diagonally. It was as if the entire field had been programmed to lean toward one point. It looked too synchronized to be natural, like all the grass was being pulled magnetically. I stood there for a minute, watching it, feeling weirdly unsettled. The air around me wasn't even moving. The barn flag was still. The trees by the house were still. But that field, only that field, had a breeze. I asked my uncle about it the next morning. He just grunted and said something like, "Yeah, that field's got a mind of its own." I thought he was joking, so I laughed. He didn't. Later that week, I started waking up around 1 a.m. Not like a groggy, slow wake-up. I mean bolt upright awake. Every night, almost exactly at 1 o'clock, something would pull me out of sleep like a jolt. No noise, no dreams, just this awareness that I needed to be up. At first, I chalked it up to the new environment, but after 5 or 6 nights, I started paying more attention. I'd lie there in the dark, listening. The house was quiet. My uncle slept like a corpse and kept his room fan on high. The crickets would be going strong outside, but then, almost without fail, I'd hear something shift, like the wind turning on. One night, I finally got up and went to the back door. I stepped out onto the porch in my socks and looked across the valley, and there it was again, the field, moving. The grass always shifted at 1 a.m. You're just like clockwork, and always in one direction, sometimes north, sometimes east. Once, I swear it was pushing against the breeze that was already in the air. It never made sense. I told myself it had to be some trick of the valley shape. Maybe the wind tunneled through there in a weird way. Maybe the field was just more open to currents. But none of that explained why it only happened at exactly the same time, or why no other part of the property reacted. The real turning point, the part that kept me from sleeping normally the rest of the summer, was the night I walked into it. This was August 3rd. The sun had been brutal all day, so the night air felt almost cool in comparison. Around 12:50 a.m., when I woke up again, like usual, but this time something was different. It's hard to explain. There was this feeling in my chest, like pressure or dread. I couldn't shake it. I got up, pulled on my boots and a hoodie, and walked outside without even thinking. I didn't have a flashlight. The moon was out, half full, hazy behind some thin clouds. I headed straight for the north field. As I got closer, I noticed something strange about the air. The sound of bugs, which had been going strong just seconds before, cut off completely. Dead silence. The only sound was the dry shuffle of my boots in the grass. I stepped over the old barbed wire at the field's edge. It had long since sagged down, easy to cross. As soon as I did, I felt, noticed, not seen exactly, but registered, like walking into a room where someone's mid-conversation and they stop. That prickling awareness. I paused, scanning the dark. The wind hit me all at once, cold, strong, and all the grass around me swayed east. It was like being inside a moving sea, the way it rippled. The grass whispered in a way that wasn't natural. It almost sounded like words, or breathing, something trying to mimic wind. I turned to look behind me, but the edge of the field was gone. At least, it felt that way. I knew I'd only walked maybe 20 feet in, but the house lights were gone. The barn was gone. Just a flat black horizon, and that soft, unnatural breeze. And then the worst part, the feeling that someone was walking behind me, not just following, mirroring. Every time I shifted my feet, I'd hear the tiniest echo of movement. A split second later, I'd step, it would step. I turned suddenly, nothing. I started walking back, the way I thought I'd come, fast. The wind shifted direction again, now pushing against me, like it didn't want me leaving. The grass whipped at my legs. The whispering sound grew sharper, like hissing. The steps behind me grew louder, closer. I broke into a run, panic kicking in. And then, just like that, I stumbled out onto the gravel driveway behind the barn. The wind stopped. The crickets started up again. The field behind me was completely still. I didn't go back to sleep that night. I just sat on the porch until the sun came up. After that, I didn't go near the field, not during the day, not ever. I didn't even want to look at it. Something was off there, something old and quiet, and watching. I asked my uncle again, more seriously this time, if he'd ever gone into it. He took a long time to answer, then said, "Once, long time ago, don't remember getting out." I thought he was joking again, but the way he said it, calm blank, made my skin crawl. The last night I spent on the ranch was August 16th. I decided I was leaving the next day. My uncle was doing better, and I couldn't sleep right anymore. That night, around 12:45 a.m., the house phone rang. Nobody calls the landline that late. I picked it up, static, then under it, a voice I couldn't make out. Male, repeating something. It almost sounded like it was calling my name, but not quite right, like the emphasis was off. It's like someone trying to say it phonetically from memory. Then it cut out. I stood there in the dark kitchen, phone still in hand, heart hammering. I turned to look out the back window. The field was already moving. This time, the grass was pointing straight toward the house. I left at dawn, drove straight to San Angelo, stayed with a friend for a week. Haven't been back since. Sometimes, in the early morning, I'll wake up at 1 a.m. on the dot, and I'll get that same pressure in my chest, like something is waiting for me to notice it. And sometimes, if I'm somewhere quiet enough, I swear I can hear the grass moving, even when there's no wind.